Marvel. I'm Superman, and I start by living with Gwen Stacy. Chapter 51. Countless choices determine our destiny. Every choice, every moment, is a ripple in the river of time. Enough ripples can change the river's course, because the future is never a fixed quantity. Charles Francis Xavier, X-Men, Days of Future Past, 2014. Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters, in the suburbs of New York. In the lobby of the main building, a large screen TV was broadcasting live news of the chaos in New York. On screen, Scarecrow's truck was releasing gas in Times Square, and citizens were fleeing in terror. Joker and Harley Quinn cheered from a rooftop, surrounded by burning fireworks. Lizard and Sandman were destroying buildings, while Spider-Man and Wonder Woman fought desperately to stop them. Charles Xavier sat in his wheelchair, paused in front of the television. He was wearing a white shirt with a blue sweater over it, his brows furrowed deeply, and his eyes filled with grave concern. He could feel the fear, despair, and anger in the hearts of New York's citizens. These negative emotions surged towards him like a tide, causing a sharp pain in his mind. Professor, things are getting worse. Storm, Aurora, walked up to Charles. She was wearing a black bodysuit, her white hair strikingly prominent under the lights. The gas released by that guy called Scarecrow causes hallucinations and drives people mad. Thousands have already been affected. Charles nodded, closed his eyes, and used his telepathic abilities to sense the situation in New York. Countless citizens were huddled in corners, trembling, their hearts filled with the fear of death. We can't wait any longer. Charles opened his eyes. Aurora, notify everyone, Cyclops, Beast, Wolverine, and the students, to assemble immediately at the helipad. We are going to New York to protect the civilians and stop these people's insane actions. Yes, Professor. Storm immediately turned, took out her communicator, and began notifying the X-Men members. In the training room, Wolverine, Logan, was punching a sandbag. He was shirtless, his muscles clearly defined, and the scars on his body were particularly noticeable, highlighted by his sweat. Since his last separation from Black Widow, he had come to Xavier's school. Charles had used telepathy to help him recover some fragmented memories, and though they were still incomplete, he knew that he could find answers here. Logan, Professor wants us to gather at the helipad, preparing to go to New York. Cyclops, Scott, pushed open the door. He was wearing a red combat suit and his signature red visor. Logan stopped, picked up the leather jacket draped nearby, casually threw it over his shoulder, and bit down on a cigar. What's happened in New York now? Joker, Lizard, Sandman, and some guy releasing gas have thrown New York into chaos, Cyclops said. Professor says the civilians there need our help. Logan raised an eyebrow. Good, I was looking for a chance to stretch my legs. He followed Cyclops towards the helipad. In the lab, Beast, Hank, was calibrating a gene analyzer. He was wearing a white lab coat, his blue fur neatly combed, and a pair of gold-rimmed glasses, making him appear gentle and refined. Upon hearing the notification on his communicator, he immediately put down his work, took a blue combat suit from the cabinet, and quickly put it on. Hank, are you ready? Charles's voice came through telepathy. Ready, Professor. Hank pushed up his glasses. I've already brought the antitoxin serum. Perhaps it can counter that Scarecrow's gas. Excellent, Charles said. On the helipad, the X-Men members gathered one after another. Storm had already started the X-Jet. The silver jet had a sleek design, the X-Men logo emblazoned on its wings, energy cannons mounted on both sides of its fuselage, and powerful thrusters at the rear. Charles, in his wheelchair, was pushed by Hank to the front of the jet. He looked at the X-Men members before him, Storm, Cyclops, Wolverine, Beast, and several graduated students, his eyes filled with determination. Everyone, Charles's voice rang out, New York is currently in an unprecedented crisis. Joker, Lizard, Sandman, and Scarecrow's fear gas are consuming the city. Countless civilians are in danger, and they need our help. Our mission is to protect those who cannot protect themselves, to fight evil, and to uphold justice. His gaze swept over everyone. This mission is very dangerous. We might get injured, or even make the ultimate sacrifice. But I believe that as long as we stand together, there is no enemy we cannot defeat. Professor, we are ready. Cyclops was the first to speak. That's right, let those scoundrels taste our power. Storm clenched her fists. Logan, cigar in mouth, nodded without speaking. Hank pushed up his glasses and said, I have analyzed the components of Scarecrow's gas and have initially developed an antitoxin serum. Although it can't completely detoxify, it can alleviate symptoms and protect us from the gas effects. Charles nodded with satisfaction. Very good. Hank will be responsible for medical support. Aurora will use her storm to disperse the gas. Logan, you'll handle close quarters combat, tying down Lizard and Sandman. Cyclops will provide long-range attacks, and I will use telepathy to disrupt the villains' minds while guiding civilians to evacuate. Move out. At Charles's command, the X-Men members boarded the X-Jet one after another. Hank closed the jet's hatch, and Storm activated the thrusters. The X-Jet emitted a low hum, slowly lifted off, and flew towards New York. Meanwhile, in New York, the fear gas from Times Square had already spread to the surrounding blocks. Klane's truck was parked in the center of the square, its spray devices operating at full speed, a pale green mist engulfing the entire square. Joker and Harley Quinn had appeared next to the truck at some point, holding megaphones, inciting fear among the citizens alongside Klane. Ha ha ha. Look how scared they are. This is the most spectacular show. Joker's laughter echoed through the square, mad and grating. All of New York will become our playground. Harley Quinn shouted, jumping, her baseball bat still stained with blood. Klane watched all of this, the smile on his face growing more maniacal. He pressed another button on the control box, and all the valves of the storage tanks opened, releasing more fear gas that surged out, spreading towards even more distant blocks. Just then, in the distant sky, a silver light flashed. The X-Jet was rapidly approaching. The Lizard's claws scraped against the glass curtain wall of the Stark Industries building with an ear-splitting shriek, sending shards of glass raining down onto the street below. He hunched his body, his scale-covered back heaving with rapid breaths. The blare of police sirens behind him had been left several blocks away, but the burning sensation of the serum surging through his blood still scorched his reason. The bio-regeneration project, he growled hoarsely, his claws digging deep into the steel structure of the wall. Stark stole it. I'm taking it back. The biolab on the top floor of the building was brightly lit. Lin Yi stood by the sterile workbench, a test tube glowing with a faint blue fluorescence pinched between his fingers. The liquid in the test tube gently swayed, reflecting the constantly changing genetic sequence map on the instrument screen. In the bottom right corner of the screen, it clearly displayed gene rejection rate, 2.8%, regeneration efficiency, 79%. When he heard the violent crash of the lab door being broken open, he didn't turn around. He simply and slowly placed the serum into a constant temperature storage box. It wasn't until the Lizard's foul-smelling shadow enveloped him from behind that he turned, the hem of his white lab coat still stained with faint purple traces of reagent residue. Dr. Curtis Connors. Lin Yi's voice was calm and unruffled. His gaze swept over the other's distorted face, resting on his eyes, which still retained the underlying human pupil color. The bio-regeneration project was not interrupted. I've already begun to push it forward again, building on the foundation of the Osborn laboratories. Look. He raised his hand and activated the holographic projection behind him. Immediately, a dozen video clips appeared on the screen. A veteran who had lost his right leg walked steadily on rehabilitation equipment, a long-lost smile on his face. A researcher who had lost both hands due to a chemical accident was now holding a test tube again with his regenerated hands. A child with congenital spinal deformity stood independently in the sunlight for the first time. 37 subjects have completed the first phase of clinical trials. In 3 more months, the optimized serum will be ready for mass production. Countless disabled people will regain their health because of this. This was your original intention for researching this project, wasn't it? The Lizard's body visibly stiffened, his claws leaving deep scratches on the floor. The violent factors brought by the serum made his temples throb. Images of the lab being sealed, the strange looks from his colleagues, and media headlines calling him a monster, flashed through his mind. But the smiles in Lin Yi's projection pricked at his reason like needles. How far have you advanced the project? His voice held an almost imperceptible tremor, and the skin beneath his scales faintly showed human skin tone, a sign that reason was temporarily suppressing the mutation. Lin Yi didn't miss this detail. His fingertips quickly slid across the control panel, bringing up a complex set of data. The gene sequence has been optimized to the 8th generation. We've used Stark Industries' nanocarrier technology, reducing the rejection rate of animal gene fragments from your 17.6% back then to 2.8%. The regeneration speed has increased by 3 times, and it won't cause excessive cell proliferation like your serum did. In short, it will only repair damaged tissue, not cause mutation. He paused, his gaze sincere. Dr. Connors, there's no need to use extreme methods to reclaim the project. Once the project is successful, I'll be the first to inject you with the optimized serum. Not only will it restore you to human form, but it will also repair the right arm you lost back then. Restore my right arm. The lizard murmured these words, a flicker of light in his clouded eyes. He unconsciously raised his mutated, scale-covered right arm, as if he could already feel the warmth of human skin. But just then, the violent factors in his blood suddenly erupted, as if ignited by something. This was a side effect of the inferior serum he had injected earlier. Whenever he had the thought of giving up destruction, it would trigger a strong loss of control. Get out. The lizard suddenly roared, his voice filled with painful struggle. I can't control it, get out of here. As he roared, he suddenly lunged at Lin Yi with his sharp claws, the tips of his nails glinting coldly. They almost grazed Lin Yi's lab coat, splitting the workbench behind him in half. The sound of shattering test tubes was deafening. Lin Yi was prepared. He tilted his body backward, gracefully floating into the air with the help of his primary flight ability. His body, with a speed of 35 points, allowed him to easily evade this fatal blow. Dr. Connors, don't let the serum control you. He shouted, simultaneously activating his intermediate heat vision. 2 orange-red heat rays shot from his eyes, their temperature instantly soaring to 1000, precisely hitting the ground at the lizard's feet. The marble floor instantly melted into a molten state, then rapidly cooled and solidified into a smooth glass layer, causing the lizard's claws to lose their grip. He staggered, nearly falling. Ding! Detected strong shock plus pain emotions from Curtis Connors. Gained 120 shock points. Current total, 24,590 points. System evaluation. Host, your heat vision was well timed. Too bad Connors is blinded by the serum, otherwise, he'd already be shaking hands with you. Next time, remember to give him a sedative first, don't just rely on talking. After stabilizing himself, the lizard became even more frenzied. His tail violently swept at the nearby lab cabinet, instantly deforming the metal cabinet. The reagent bottles inside crashed to the floor, purple and green liquids mixing together, emitting pungent white smoke. Stop talking nonsense. Either give me the project, or I'll destroy this place. He roared and lunged again, his claws aiming for Lin Yi's ankle. He saw that Lin Yi's flight speed wasn't fast, primary flight was only 50 kilometers per hour, and wanted to restrict his movement this way. Lin Yi frowned slightly. He suddenly grabbed the other's claw. The impact of their collision produced a dull thud. The lizard felt a sharp pain in his wrist, as if he had grabbed a steel plate. Dr. Connors, I don't want to hurt you. Lin Yi said helplessly. He could easily withstand the force of the other's attack. But if you keep destroying things like this, you'll not only ruin the lab but also injure innocent people downstairs. But the lizard was no longer listening. His other claw suddenly swiped at Lin Yi's chest. The nails tore Lin Yi's lab coat, leaving 3 shallow blood marks on his skin. But the next second, the blood marks healed at a visible speed. Lin Yi's eyes darkened. He no longer held back. He grabbed the lizard's arm with his left hand, gathered strength in his right hand, and punched him in the abdomen. The lizard grunted, his body flying backward and crashing heavily against the lab wall. The wall instantly cracked with spiderweb-like fissures, and brick and stone debris showered down. Their battle quickly broke out of the lab. When the lizard was cornered by Lin Yi's heat vision, he suddenly exerted force and slammed into a nearby load-bearing pillar. The entire wall collapsed with a crash, revealing Pepper's office next door. Pepper was sitting behind her desk, working on documents. When she saw the man and monster suddenly burst in, she jumped up in fright, her pen falling to the floor. The 2 guards outside the office reacted quickly, immediately rushing in with their guns raised, shouting sternly, "Drop your weapons. Don't move. But the lizard was completely out of control at this moment. Hearing the guard's reprimand, he suddenly turned around and knocked two guards flying with a sweep of his tail. The guards hit the wall, spitting blood, and died on the spot. Lin Yi's pupils contracted, and without hesitation, he activated his flying ability, flew behind the lizard, grabbed his shoulders with both hands, and pressed him firmly to the ground. Connors. Wake up. You've killed innocent people. Ding. Detected strong shock plus fear emotions from Pepper Potts, gained 150 shock points. Current total, 24,740 points. Ding. Detected strong fear plus disbelief emotions from Stark Industries guards before death, gained 80 shock points total for 2 people. Current total, 24,820 points. System evaluation. Host, you're in big trouble now. You killed Tony's men and scared his wife. When Tony comes back, he'll probably want to fight you. But your suppression speed was fast enough to prevent Connors from killing more people, so it barely balances out your merits and demerits. Miss Pepper, get out of here quickly. Lin Yi, while firmly holding down the struggling lizard, shouted to Pepper. Pepper reacted, quickly grabbed the emergency communicator on the table, and ran out of the office. Lin Yi's white lab coat was mostly torn, and he was trying his best to restrain the lizard's movements. The lizard was still struggling wildly, his scales scraping the ground with a harsh sound, and he clawed deep grooves into the floor. Lin Yi gritted his teeth, freed one hand, and pulled out the newly formulated optimized serum from his pocket. He had kept the storage box protected in his arms during the chaos, so the serum hadn't been damaged. He accurately located the lizard's carotid artery, plunged the syringe in, and the light blue serum instantly injected into the opponent's body. A few seconds later, the lizard's struggles gradually weakened, the scales covering his body began to shed, his distorted limbs slowly returned to human form, and his eyes, once filled with rage, gradually cleared. When the last scale fell to the ground, Curtis Connors finally returned to human form, but he still had side effects from the serum, his face as pale as paper, and he collapsed weakly to the ground. Lin Yi breathed a sigh of relief, pulled out a pair of silver handcuffs from his pocket, which Sheriff George had given him earlier. He cuffed Connors's hands, then found a broken steel bar and tied him to a nearby metal stand, ensuring he wouldn't suddenly lose control again. After all this, he took out his phone and dialed Gwen's number. Gwen, did you get the spider suit? The sound of wind and webs breaking through the air came from the other end of the phone. Gwen excitedly said, I got it. I just came out of Wayne Tower. Mr. Alfred is so nice, he not only gave me the suit but also helped me adjust the web fluid's strength. Lin Yi could imagine her swinging with webs while talking on a Bluetooth headset, and he couldn't help but smile. That's good. Be careful, the Sandman's situation seems very tricky. Don't worry. I'll be at the battlefield soon. Gwen finished, then added, Lin Yi, you be careful too. Ding. Detected strong concern plus excitement emotions from Gwen Stacy, gained 100 shock points. Current total, 24,920 points. System evaluation. Host, this concern came at the right time. Gwen almost thinks of you as her older brother. Hanging up the phone, Lin Yi looked down at Connors, who was tied to the stand. He was bowing his head, his shoulders trembling slightly, unsure if he was regretting or in pain. Lin Yi didn't say much, just turned and walked towards the damaged laboratory, starting to gather the scattered documents and equipment. Those were the core data of the biological regeneration project and could not be lost. Meanwhile, on the battlefield on the other side of the city, the Sandman's situation was completely out of control. His body continuously absorbed the surrounding sand, having expanded to dozens of stories high. Each time his giant foot landed, the ground vibrated violently, and buildings along the street collapsed like building blocks. Diana, holding the lasso of truth, nimbly dodged the Sandman's giant punches. The lasso wrapped around his arm, attempting to restrict his movements, but the Sandman's strength was too immense. She could only be dragged through the air by him, her golden armor covered in sand. Peter was even more disheveled. He had just wrapped his web around the Sandman's leg when he was hit by a house-sized punch, falling onto the street like a broken kite, his mouth full of sand. He struggled to get up, a sharp pain shooting through his ribs, and his vision blurred. The Sandman's punch had almost shattered his internal organs. Peter. A clear voice suddenly came. Peter looked up to see a white figure sweeping through the air, webs precisely sticking to a nearby street lamp. Gwen landed steadily in front of him, wearing a silver-white spider suit adorned with black web patterns. Gwen extended her hand. Are you all right? Peter was stunned, looking at the webs autonomously shooting from her wrist, then at her suit, too shocked to speak. Gwen. You also have spider powers. And this suit. Gwen smiled and pulled Peter up with force. It's a long story, and now is not the time to talk about it. Miss Diana is almost at her limit, we need to help quickly. As soon as she finished speaking, she saw the Sandman's giant fist again smashing towards Diana, who could only barely block it with her Amazonian shield. Peter immediately snapped back to reality, wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, and with a flick of his wrist, his web stuck to the Sandman's shoulder. You're right. Let's go. Gwen nodded, simultaneously shooting out two webs, sticking them to the Sandman's left and right legs. The two exchanged a look, then pulled back with force. The webs instantly tautened, and the Sandman's movements noticeably slowed down. Diana seized the opportunity to break free from the Sandman's restraint, landing beside the two, catching her breath, her black hair covered in sand. You're here. That's great. This Sandman is too difficult to deal with. His body is entirely made of sand, my sword and lasso can't hurt him at all, and he keeps absorbing surrounding sand to grow bigger. I know how to restrain him. Peter immediately said. Linyi just said his heat vision can turn sand into glass, which will prevent the sand from regenerating. But Linyi is still at Stark Tower right now, we need to find a way to hold on until he arrives. Gwen's eyes lit up. Then we'll tie him up first and prevent him from continuing to absorb sand. With that, Gwen shot out webs again, this time not directly wrapping around the Sandman, but shooting webs at the surrounding buildings, weaving a giant web around the Sandman's body, temporarily blocking the Sandman's path to absorb distant sand. Peter, meanwhile, circled behind the Sandman, wrapping webs around his arms, trying to prevent him from swinging his fists. The Sandman roared, his body struggling violently, trying to break free from the web's restraint. But Gwen and Peter worked together seamlessly, one distracting from the front, the other interfering from the side. Diana seized the chance, wrapped the lasso of truth around the Sandman's neck, and pulled hard, and although it couldn't hurt him, it could temporarily prevent him from lowering his head to destroy surrounding buildings. Hold on. Peter shouted, he could feel the webs stretching under the Sandman's power, threatening to break at any moment. Linyi should be here soon. Gwen gritted her teeth, sweat beading on her forehead. I can hold on. But this guy's strength is too great, my arms are almost sore. Just then, a whooshing sound came from a distance, and an orange-red heat vision beam shot down from the sky, precisely hitting the Sandman's left arm. The Sandman's left arm instantly solidified, turning into transparent glass, and the sand inside could no longer flow. Linyi's voice came from the air, I'm here. Are you all right? Everyone looked up to see Linyi rapidly flying in with his basic flight ability, his white lab coat replaced with a black combat suit. He slightly raised his hands, preparing to activate his heat vision again. Ding! Detected strong shock plus relief emotions from Diana Prince, gained 150 shock points. Current total, 25,250 points. Ding! Detected strong admiration plus reassurance emotions from Gwen Stacy, gained 120 shock points. Current total, 25,370 points. Ding! Detected strong surprise plus gratitude emotions from Peter Parker, gained 130 shock points. Current total, 25,500 points. System evaluation. Host, you arrived just in time. Another step later, Gwen and Peter would have been flattened by the Sandman. But your heat vision hit quite accurately, disabling one of the Sandman's arms at once. Now quickly turn this Sandman into a sand sculpture. Linyi's gaze fell on the Sandman, quickly analyzing his weaknesses. Although his body is entirely made of sand, as long as we use heat vision to turn his critical parts into glass, we can restrict his movement. Miss Diana, please wrap your lasso around his body to prevent him from moving. Gwen, Peter, use your webs to fix his legs and arms, and I'll deal with his upper body. Understood. The three responded simultaneously. Diana immediately adjusted her posture, and the lasso of truth flew out again, wrapping around the Sandman's waist and pulling hard backward. Gwen and Peter, meanwhile, wrapped their webs around the Sandman's 2 legs and arms, firmly fixing him in place. The Sandman struggled wildly, his massive body shaking constantly, and deep cracks appeared in the ground, but under the combined restraint of the 3, he still couldn't move an inch. Lin Yi took a deep breath, his eyes once again glowing orange-red. Intermediate heat vision was fully activated, the temperature soaring to 1000 degrees Celsius. 2 heat rays struck the Sandman's right arm and torso respectively. The Sandman's right arm instantly turned to glass, and a large part of his torso also solidified. The sand inside could no longer flow, his movements became slower and slower, and his roars gradually weakened. Keep pushing. Lin Yi shouted, he could feel the heat vision's energy rapidly depleting, the 20-second duration was almost up. Only 5 seconds left. Everyone hold on. Diana gritted her teeth, the muscles in her arms taut. No problem. Gwen and Peter also gave it their all, their webs constantly extending in their hands, firmly securing the Sandman's legs. After 20 seconds, Lin Yi's heat vision stopped precisely. His eyes felt slightly sore. Continuous use of intermediate heat vision still put a certain strain on his body, but the effect was very significant. Most of the Sandman's limbs and torso had turned to glass, with only his head still capable of slight movement, unable to launch any more attacks. Lin Yi breathed a sigh of relief, landed on the ground, and looked at the Sandman fixed in place, a smile appearing at the corner of his mouth. Done. Now we just wait for the police to handle him and transport him to a specialized containment facility. Peter and Gwen also released their webs, slumping to the ground, panting heavily. Diana walked over to Lin Yi and patted his shoulder approvingly. Lin Yi, you're amazing. If it weren't for you, we wouldn't have been able to subdue this Sandman. Ding. Detected strong admiration plus approval emotions from Diana Prince, gained 200 shock points. Current total, 25,700 points. Ding. Detected strong adoration plus respect emotions from Gwen Stacy, gained 180 shock points. Current total, 25,880 points. Ding. Detected strong admiration plus gratitude emotions from Peter Parker, gained 170 shock points. Current total, 26,050 points. System evaluation. Host, this move was incredibly cool. Not only did you subdue the Sandman, but you also gained Diana's approval. The Avengers might just be extending an olive branch to you now. However, your heat vision cooldown is still 20 seconds. If the Sandman had accomplices, you would have been in trouble. Next time, remember to stock up on energy drinks. True freedom is making your enemies fear your existence. Eric Magnus Lenscher, X-Men. Dark Phoenix, 2019. Just as Lin Yi retracted his heat vision, he caught a glimpse of a silver-gray shadow streaking across the skyline. The shadow, accompanied by a sharp whooshing sound, cut a smooth arc through the night, drawing closer and closer, finally stopping above the battlefield. The cabin door slowly opened, and Cyclops' red visor gleamed with a cold light. He was the first to jump down, followed by Wolverine, Logan, whose cigar was still smoking. X-Men. Peter exclaimed in surprise. Gwen also stood up, a strand of web silk wrapping around her wrist. It was her first time seeing so many special ability users. The X-Jet's hatch continued to descend, and Storm, Aurora, floated down on a current of air, her white hair fluttering in the night wind. As she raised her hands, clouds slowly began to gather. Beast, Hank, landed, his blue fur glistening under the streetlights, a metal case in his hand. Finally, Professor X, Charles, emerged in his wheelchair, his gaze sweeping over the subdued Sandman before resting on Lin Yi, a slight smile playing on his lips. I've heard about you, Lin Yi. Professor X. Lin Yi nodded. Ding. Detecting the full appearance of the X-Men. Surrounding citizens, Peter and Gwen are experiencing strong shock emotions. Gained shock value plus 200 times 15, citizens plus 150, Peter plus 180, Gwen equals 3,430 points. Current cumulative, 26,050 plus 3,430 equals 29,480 points. System evaluation. Professor X has quite the presence. But host, be careful, Magneto might also be nearby. If a fight breaks out later, your 10% awakening level won't be enough quickly accumulate shock value to reach 11%. Professor X said no more, turning to Cyclops and giving orders. Scott, take Logan to deal with the fear gas tanker. Be sure to shut down the spraying device. Aurora, use rainwater to dilute the gas in the air, being careful to avoid civilian areas. Hank, immediately inject the injured citizens with the antidote serum. Lin Yi, I'll trouble you and Peter and Gwen to assist us in evacuating the surrounding crowd. Cyclops and Wolverine immediately ran towards the other end of the street, where piercing police sirens were blaring. Kraven's fear gas truck was over there. Lin Yi looked in their direction and saw a modified heavy tanker truck blocking the middle of the road. The truck body was painted a bizarre green, and its roof was equipped with a dozen rotating spray devices. Pale green gas was gushing out of the devices, and citizens nearby, after inhaling the gas, were either cowering on the ground screaming or wildly swinging their fists at those around them, creating a chaotic scene. Kraven stood on top of the tanker, wearing a scarecrow-like jacket, holding a megaphone, his voice manic and shrill. Feel the fear. New York. This is how you should be. Only fear can make you see yourselves clearly. When he saw Cyclops and Wolverine running towards him, he didn't panic. Instead, he laughed even more wildly. Oh, the X-Men are here. Perfect. Let you also taste my newly improved fear gas. He pressed a red button beside him, and several small cannons suddenly popped out from the side of the tanker, aiming at Cyclops and Wolverine. Pale green gas shells, whoosh whoosh, shot out. Cyclops immediately activated his visor, and a red energy beam instantly pierced through the shells, causing the gas to explode in midair, forming a cloud of green smoke. Wolverine seized the opportunity to charge forward, his metal claws slashing open the car door. He jumped into the driver's cabin, grabbed Kraven by the collar, and dragged him down from the tanker. Lunatic. Wolverine snorted coldly, pinning Kraven to the ground, his metal claws pressed against his throat. Tell me, how do you shut off the spraying device? Kraven, however, was still laughing, his eyes full of madness. Shut it off. Impossible. I want to turn all of New York into a playground of fear. You can't stop me. Just then, Hank ran over, carrying the metal case. He crouched down and quickly injected a little girl who had inhaled the gas with the antidote serum. The little girl's screams gradually stopped, and her eyes regained clarity. Hank stood up and looked at the tanker's control panel, his blue brows furrowed, the spraying device is remotely controlled. There's no shut-off button here. We need to find Kraven's remote control. Lin Yi, having just finished evacuating the nearby citizens, ran over to help. He saw a black remote control hanging from Kraven's waist and immediately reminded Wolverine, Logan, he has a remote control on his waist. Wolverine's eyes sharpened, and he reached out with his other hand, snatching the remote control. Hank immediately took the remote control and quickly pressed several buttons. The spraying devices on the tanker finally stopped operating, and the pale green gas gradually dissipated. Storm also controlled the clouds, bringing down a light rain. The rainwater diluted the residual gas in the air, and fresh air slowly spread. Done. Cyclops retracted his visor, letting out a sigh of relief. Wolverine handcuffed Kraven and handed him over to the arriving SHIELD agents. Keep an eye on him. Don't let him cause any more trouble. The agents quickly nodded and escorted Kraven away. Lin Yi looked at the street, which was returning to order, and just as he breathed a sigh of relief, he suddenly felt a violent tremor from the ground. What's going on? Gwen held onto a nearby streetlight. Peter also frowned, looking up in the direction of the tremor. The night sky there suddenly lit up with a metallic glow, as if countless metal fragments were converging in the air. Professor X's expression instantly changed. He closed his eyes, his mental power quickly spreading out. A few seconds later, he opened his eyes, his voice grave. It's Magneto. He's brought the Brotherhood. No sooner had he spoken than a huge torrent of metal suddenly rushed from a distance. Streetlights, cars, rebar, manhole covers, all metal objects were controlled by an invisible force, converging in the air to form a massive metal wall, blocking the X-Men and Lin Yi's group. Magneto, Eric, hovered above the metal wall, his helmet obscuring half of his face, his eyes filled with cold authority. Behind him, Mystique, Raven, had transformed into the appearance of a SHIELD agent, holding an energy gun, quietly approaching Hank. Riptide, Marco, controlled a whirlwind, sweeping surrounding cars into the air, ready to hurl them. Sabretooth, Victor's claws gleamed with a cold light, a bloodthirsty smile on his lips, staring intently at Wolverine. And several other mutants in black combat suits, some able to control flames, others able to harden their skin, stood densely behind Magneto, forming a dark, oppressive line. Charles, long time no see. Magneto's voice, with its metallic quality, echoed throughout the entire district. You're still so fond of meddling. What do human chaos and our mutants have to do with each other? Yet you insist on cleaning up their mess for them. Professor X shook his head. Eric, chaos will only make humans hate mutants more. What we need to do is coexist peacefully, not escalate conflict. Peaceful coexistence. Magneto sneered, waved his hand, and the metal fragments in the air suddenly shot towards the X-Men. You're too naive, Charles. Only by making humans feel our power, by making them fear us, will they respect us. Today, I will make New York our mutant stage. Cyclops immediately activated his visor, and a red energy beam shot at the metal fragments, pulverizing them. But more and more metal fragments came pouring in. Storm had no choice but to control the lightning, striking the fragments into charcoal. Wolverine charged at Sabretooth, his metal claws clashing with the others. The two wrestled, their wounds quickly healing under their self-healing abilities, only to be replaced by new scars. Watch out! Lin Yi suddenly shouted. Mystique had quietly circled behind Hank, her energy gun aimed at his back. Lin Yi immediately activated his basic flight ability, increasing his speed to 35 points, and instantly rushed to Hank's side, pushing him away. The energy gun's beam grazed Hank's shoulder and hit a nearby car, which instantly exploded, sending flames soaring into the sky. Seeing her sneak attack fail, Mystique immediately reverted to her original form, her eyes filled with surprise. You can actually see through my shapeshifting. Ding! Detected strong shock emotion from Mystique Raven, gained plus 200 shock points. Current cumulative, 29,480 plus 200 equals 29,680 points. System evaluation. Host's reaction is quite fast. However, Mystique's shapeshifting ability is no joke. Next time, she might turn into Gwen to trick you, so be careful. Lin Yi ignored Mystique and turned to Hank, asking, "Are you alright?" Hank shook his head and said gratefully, "Thank you, Lin Yi. Luckily, you warned me in time." He immediately pulled a small device from his pocket, pressed a button, and the device emitted a high-frequency sound wave. Mystique's face instantly turned pale, and she clutched her ears, painfully crouching on the ground. What is this thing? An anti-shape-shifting sonic device, specifically designed for your genetic sequence, Hank said. Raven, you should know, you can't escape. Mystique gritted her teeth, struggling to stand up, but was suppressed by the high-frequency sound waves, unable to move. Lin Yi then turned to look at Riptide, who was controlling a whirlwind towards a group of civilians, scaring several children into crying. Lin Yi immediately activated his intermediate heat vision, and two red rays shot towards the center of the whirlwind, instantly reaching 1,000. The air in the whirlwind was heated, dissipating instantly, and the car that was caught in the air crashed heavily to the ground, fortunately not hitting any civilians. What? Riptide was stunned. His whirlwind had never been broken so easily before. He immediately controlled more whirlwinds, shooting them towards Lin Yi. Lin Yi, using his flying ability, flexibly dodged while simultaneously activating his heat vision again, breaking down the whirlwinds one by one. Ding! Detected strong shock emotion from Riptide Marco, gained plus 180 shock points. Current cumulative, 29,680 plus 180 equals 29,860 points. Ding! Detected strong shock plus gratitude emotions from surrounding civilians, gained plus 150 times 20 equals 3,000 shock points. Current cumulative, 29,860 plus 3,000 equals 32,860 points. Ding! Cumulative shock points reached 33,000 points. Superman Gene Awakening increased to 11%. Basic attribute panel updated. Strength, 39 plus 3. Speed, 38 plus 3. Endurance, 40 plus 3. Reaction, 37 plus 3. Self-healing, 35 plus 3. IQ, 220 plus 10. New functions unlocked. Heat vision advanced can emit ultra-high temperature heat rays, Temperature approximately 1500, duration 30 seconds, cooldown 15 minutes. Flight intermediate, can fly at low to mid altitudes, speed approximately 80 km per hour, duration 2 hours, cooldown 20 minutes. System evaluation. Congratulations host on reaching 11%. The heat vision temperature is enough to grill steaks, and the flying speed has also increased significantly, but Magneto hasn't made his move yet. If he controls metal to attack you, you'd better run quickly. Magneto saw Lin Yi break Riptide's whirlwind. A hint of surprise flashed in his eyes, which then turned even colder. He waved his hand, and the Sandman, which Lin Yi had solidified with his heat vision, suddenly vibrated violently. Cracks began to appear on the glass shell covering the Sandman, and Magneto controlled the surrounding metal fragments, smashing them like cannonballs against the glass shell. Crack. The glass shell shattered instantly, and the sand inside began to flow again. The Sandman roared, his body expanding once more, quickly returning to his dozens of stories tall form. He swung his giant fist towards Professor X, who had no choice but to form a psychic barrier, barely blocking the giant fist, but the barrier instantly developed cracks. Charles, look. Magneto laughed loudly. This is the power of mutants. Humans simply cannot resist. The situation instantly reversed. The X-Men were already short-handed, and now with the addition of the Sandman and the Brotherhood mutants, they were completely at a disadvantage. Cyclops' energy beam was almost depleted, barely able to block the metal fragments. Storm's lightning was blocked by Magneto's metal wall, unable to hit the Brotherhood members. Wolverine and Sabretooth were locked in a fierce battle, unable to help. Hank was entangled by two fire mutants, his blue fur scorched in several places. Although Peter and Gwen were helping to evacuate civilians, they could only barely use their webs to stall for time against the Sandman's giant fist. Lin Yi looked at the X-Men in distress, took a deep breath, and knew that only he could help now. He activated his intermediate flight ability, increasing his speed to 80 km per hour, quickly flew in front of the Sandman, and simultaneously activated his advanced heat vision, shooting two 1500 orange-red rays at the Sandman's head. The Sandman's head was instantly heated, and the sand began to melt into glass, but Magneto immediately controlled metal fragments to block the heat vision, and the Sandman quickly healed. Kid, you've got guts. Magneto looked at Lin Yi, but in front of me, your abilities are not worth mentioning. He waved his hand, and all the metal objects around Lin Yi suddenly flew up, smashing towards him. Streetlights, car parts, rebar, densely formed a torrent of metal. Lin Yi immediately dodged, but there were too many metal objects, and his arm was still scratched by a piece of rebar, blood instantly flowing out. However, his self-healing ability quickly took effect, and the wound healed within a few seconds. He activated his heat vision again, shooting at Magneto's metal wall. The 1500 high temperature caused the metal wall to begin melting, creating a gap. What? Magneto's expression changed. He didn't expect Lin Yi's heat vision to be able to melt his metal wall. He immediately controlled more metal to repair the gap, but Lin Yi's heat vision consistently focused on one point, and the gap grew larger and larger. Ding! Detected strong shock emotion from Magneto. Eric, gained plus 300 shock points. Current cumulative. 32,860 plus 300 equals 33,160 points. Ding! Detected strong shock plus relief emotions from Professor X. Charles, gained plus 250 shock points. Current cumulative. 33,160 plus 250 equals 33,410 points. System evaluation. Host, this direct confrontation with Magneto is quite cool. However, your heat vision cooldown is almost up. Find an opportunity to retreat quickly. Don't fight him head-on. Magneto is a formidable character who can control the Earth's magnetic field. Just as Lin Yi was about to break through the metal wall, his heat vision suddenly stopped. The 30-second duration was over, entering a 15-minute cooldown period. Magneto seized the opportunity, controlling the metal wall to rapidly contract, trapping Lin Yi in the middle. Lin Yi tried to push the metal with his arms, but the metal wall was too sturdy, and he couldn't move it at all. Kid, game over. Magneto sneered, raising his hand to control metal fragments to stab Lin Yi. Just then, a golden light suddenly shot from a distance, hitting the metal wall. It was Diana. Wielding the godkiller sword, she quickly rushed over and sliced the metal wall in half with one stroke, saving Lin Yi. Lin Yi, are you alright? Diana asked with concern. I'm fine, thank you, Ms. Diana. Lin Yi breathed a sigh of relief. Diana nodded, then turned to Magneto. Eric Lenscher, your actions have harmed countless innocent people. If you don't stop now, I will not hold back. Magneto looked at Diana, the Amazonian princess. Don't think you can stop me. He waved his hand, and more metal objects flew up, shooting towards Diana and Lin Yi. Diana immediately raised her Amazonian shield, blocking the metal objects. The golden shield made loud, bang bang, sounds, but showed no signs of damage. On the rooftop of the Osborne Industries building, Norman Osborn stood on the edge, holding a black remote control, in front of a giant rain device. The main body of the device was a metal cylinder covered with tiny nozzles, connected to several transparent tubes through which green liquid flowed, the Green Goblin's super soldier serum. Soon, all of New York will become my masterpiece. Norman shouted as he pressed the red button on the remote control. The rain device began to hum, and fine mist emerged from the nozzles. As soon as this rain falls, everyone in New York will become a super soldier. They will worship me, revere me. By then, Stark, Bruce Wayne, and all those so-called heroes will bow before me. Just then, a slight sound came from the edge of the rooftop. Norman turned sharply to see a black figure leap onto the rooftop from the edge, landing without a sound. The person wore a black bat suit, a helmet obscuring his face, revealing only a pair of deep blue eyes, cold and sharp. It was Batman, Bruce Wayne. Norman Osborn, it's time to wake up from your dream. Bruce's voice, distorted by the suit's voice changer, had a slightly mechanical quality. The super soldier serum will only plunge New York into greater chaos. You are not creating a masterpiece, you are manufacturing a disaster. Norman paused, then burst out laughing. Bruce Wayne, you actually dared to come here. Do you think your tattered suit can stop me? He pressed a button on his waist, and the glider beneath his feet suddenly unfolded, lifting him into the air. At the same time, he pulled several pumpkin bombs from his cape and hurled them at Bruce. Bang! 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 The pumpkin bombs exploded around Bruce, and flames and smoke instantly engulfed the entire rooftop. Norman, thinking Bruce had been blown to bits, laughed triumphantly. I told you, you're no match for me. But as the smoke cleared, Bruce's figure appeared on the other side of the rooftop. He had just thrown several batarangs, hitting the pumpkin bombs, fuses, causing them to detonate prematurely. He then used the cover of the smoke to quickly move to a safe position. Bruce wasted no words, raising his hand and throwing a smoke bomb. Black smoke once again filled the air, obscuring Norman's vision. Norman cursed, maneuvering his glider through the smoke, simultaneously opening the machine guns on the glider and wildly spraying bullets into the smoke. Bullets struck the rooftop with a da-da-da sound, leaving the concrete pockmarked. Bruce, meanwhile, moved nimbly through the smoke, familiar with every corner of the rooftop. He used obstacles for cover, rapidly approaching the rain device. He knew that if he destroyed the rain device, Norman's plan would fail. He pulled a bat claw from his waist, aimed it at the metal cylinder of the rain device, and pressed the button. The claw, attached to a rope, shot out and firmly hooked the cylinder. Never. Norman, sensing Bruce's intention, immediately steered his glider over and kicked at Bruce. Bruce was prepared, sidestepping the attack. At the same time, the bat claw caused the cylinder to violently shake, spilling green serum onto the rooftop with a sizzle. The two engaged in a fierce struggle on the rooftop. Norman, with the agility of his glider, launched continuous attacks from the air, using pumpkin bombs and machine guns in turn. Bruce, relying on his extensive combat skills and the defensive capabilities of his suit, dodged and counterattacked on the ground, using batarangs and smoke bombs to constantly disrupt Norman's actions. Bruce Wayne, you can't win against me. Norman shouted while firing. My glider allows me to stay airborne indefinitely, but your stamina will eventually run out. By then, you'll just have to watch me complete my plan. Bruce said nothing, his eyes still cold. His hands secretly gripped the taser on his waist, a weapon he had prepared specifically for the Green Goblin, capable of instantly releasing high-voltage current to disrupt the glider's circuits. He waited for the right moment. As soon as Norman got close, he would fire. The battle on the rooftop continued, and the nozzles of the rain device had begun to spray more mist, with the green serum spreading through the air. Bruce knew he didn't have much time. Once the serum spread beyond the rooftop, the consequences would be unimaginable. He took a deep breath, preparing for the final push. Inside Tony's private villa, rock music still reverberated, and the living room had been converted into a makeshift laboratory. The walls had been smashed through, revealing the steel reinforcement inside. Several thick cables connected to a central device, a compact particle accelerator, modified from Stark Industries parts and old equipment left by Howard Stark. In the center lay a triangular crystal, surrounded by several blue laser beams. Tony, wearing an oil-stained white tank top, held a wrench and was adjusting the prism angle of the laser beams. His forehead was covered in sweat, and the old palladium arc reactor in his chest glowed faintly blue. Black veins had already appeared around the reactor on his skin. The symptoms of palladium poisoning were worsening, but his eyes were full of excitement. Jarvis, adjust the laser beam intensity to 70%, focusing on the center of the crystal. Tony said as he turned the wrench. The prism's angle slowly adjusted, and the laser beam became more concentrated, its blue light illuminating his face. Sir, the laser beam intensity has been adjusted to 70%, and the particle accelerator is ready. Jarvis's voice was mechanically calm. A reminder, this experiment has not undergone simulation and carries unknown risks. I recommend performing safety tests first. Safety tests. No, Tony said. Jarvis, I don't have much time left. It's either success or death, no middle ground. He pressed the red button nearby, and the particle accelerator began to hum. The laser beams rapidly accelerated particles, which formed a blue halo around the crystal, constantly colliding and merging. Minutes later, the crystal suddenly emitted a strong white light, illuminating the entire living room. Tony squinted, staring intently at the crystal. After the white light faded, a small piece of silvery white substance appeared in the center of the crystal, emitting a soft glow. The surrounding air seemed to become much fresher. It worked. Tony quickly walked over, carefully picked up the silvery white substance with tweezers, and observed it before his eyes. Sir, energy stability is detected at 98%, containing no toxins. It can completely replace the palladium core as the energy source for the arc reactor. Jarvis's voice seemed to carry a hint of joy. Congratulations, sir, you have created a new element. Tony took the new element and walked to the mirror, lifting his tank top. The old palladium arc reactor in his chest had begun to flash red warning lights, and the black veins had spread to his collarbone. The pain made him wince, but there was more relief and excitement. Jarvis, prepare to change into the Mark 6 armor. Tony said. Sir, the new element has not yet undergone energy output testing. Direct replacement may pose risks, Jarvis reminded. I'll test it directly with my body. Tony opened the reactor's casing and removed the old palladium core, which had turned black and emitted faint toxins. He placed the new element into the reactor, closed the casing, and with a click, reinstalled the reactor into his chest. The new element instantly emitted a blue glow, softer and more stable than the old palladium core's light. Tony could feel a warm energy flowing through his body. The pain in his chest gradually disappeared, and the black veins slowly began to recede. He took a deep breath. I feel great, Jarvis. Sir, the new element's energy output is stable, and your body's vital signs are returning to normal, Jarvis said. Excellent. Tony nodded, walked to the display case nearby, where a brand new Mark armor was stored. Jarvis, prepare for departure, Tony said. I need to get to the battlefield immediately. Pepper is still in Stark Tower. I can't let anything happen to her. The armor's various components began to automatically assemble, covering Tony's body. The new element reactor, perfectly integrated with the armor, glowed blue in his chest. Snap. The moment the faceplate closed, Tony's eyes sharpened. Now, he was Iron Man again. The sky suddenly split open, revealing a brilliant rainbow. Golden light pierced through New York's thick clouds, illuminating the chaotic battlefield as if it were daytime. Everyone instinctively looked up, only to see a tall figure, clad in a red cape and wielding Mjolnir, slowly descending within the Rainbow Bridge's aura. The hammer in his hand glowed with faint blue lightning, and each step he took caused the ground to tremble slightly. Violent thunderous power swirled around him, instantly overpowering the din of the battlefield. Thor. Professor X, seated in his wheelchair, exclaimed, "Thor of Asgard, why are you here?" Thor didn't answer immediately. He swung Mjolnir, and a thick bolt of lightning descended from the sky, accurately striking the Sandman. Boom! The lightning instantly pierced through the Sandman's body, and the sand inside sizzled as it was scorched by the electricity. His massive body instantly disintegrated into a shower of sand, temporarily losing its ability to coalesce. Having done all this, Thor turned around, his gaze sweeping quickly across the battlefield, his voice resounding like a bell. "Who is Lin Yi?" Lin Yi had just punched away the Brotherhood mutant, Juggernaut, a 2-meter-tall strongman with skin as hard as steel. Hearing Thor's call, he turned and raised his hand. "That's me." Thor strode up to Lin Yi, laughing heartily as he clapped him on the shoulder. The force was so great that even with 37 points of stamina, Lin Yi couldn't help but stumble. "Thank you for your reminder. You enlightened me." Thor shook Mjolnir in his hand. "I've retrieved my hammer and dealt with Asgard's troubles. Heimdall said you were in great trouble on Midgard, Blue Star, so I came immediately. Now, tell me, what do you need me to do?" Lin Yi rubbed his numb shoulder and pointed at the Brotherhood members still entangled with the X-Men. "Help us control the Brotherhood, especially Magneto. They're destroying the city and harming innocent civilians. Leave it to me." Thor raised Mjolnir, and the lightning around him instantly became furious. He leapt into the air, flying aloft, Mjolnir spinning rapidly in his hand, stirring up gusts of wind. "The thunder of Asgard will judge you." Before his words finished, Thor swung Mjolnir, and bolt after bolt of lightning struck the Brotherhood members. The mutant, Riptide, was about to manipulate the air currents to counterattack when he was struck by lightning, convulsing as he fell to the ground. Pyros, flames were instantly extinguished by the lightning, and he himself was so shocked that his hair stood on end. Mystique, Raven, was also struck in the back by Thor's Mjolnir, falling to the ground unable to move. Seeing the unfavorable situation, Magneto abruptly raised both hands, attempting to control all the metal on the battlefield. Lampposts, car wrecks, and even the helmets of X-Men members flew towards Thor. "An idiot from outer space dares to interfere with my affairs," Magneto roared, and metal fragments coalesced into a giant barrier in front of him. Thor, gripping Mjolnir, roared and charged directly at the metal barrier. The moment Mjolnir struck the metal barrier, faint blue lightning erupted, and the metal fragments on the barrier were instantly melted by the electric current, turning into puddles of molten iron. Magneto's face changed drastically. He could clearly feel that he couldn't control Mjolnir at all. The hammer contained a sacred and powerful magic that was completely unaffected by his metal control ability. "Impossible." Magneto's eyes widened. "There's no metal in the world I can't control." "That's because mortals' understanding is too shallow." Thor slammed his hammer into the ground in front of Magneto, and lightning spread along the ground, striking Magneto's leg. Magneto grunted, falling to his knees, his armor stinging as the electrical current continuously eroded his body through it. Thor stepped forward and held Mjolnir against Magneto's chest. "Surrender, or I won't mind sending you to Asgard's prison, where you'll never see the light of day." Magneto had to admit that he was no match for Thor. The divine power of Asgard far exceeded his imagination. He slowly lowered his hands. "The rise of mutants will never stop here." Ding! Detected strong recognition emotion from Thor. Gained plus 500 shock value, special bonus for a deity-level character. Ding! Detected strong shock plus unwillingness emotions from Magneto. Gained plus 300 shock value, special bonus for a top-tier mutant. Ding! Detected strong shock plus admiration emotions from Professor X, Wolverine, and other X-Men. Gained plus 800 shock value collective bonus for an elite team. Ding! Cumulative shock value reached 28,000 points. Superman Gene Awakening increased to 12%. Ding! Cumulative shock value reached 30,000 points. Superman Gene Awakening increased to 13%. Ding! Cumulative shock value reached 32,000 points. Superman Gene Awakening increased to 14%. Ding! Cumulative shock value reached 35,000 points. Superman Gene Awakening increased to 15%. System evaluation. Thor just helped you boost 5 percentage points directly. Hug the gods, legs more often in the future. Lin Yi watched as Thor alone suppressed most of the Brotherhood members, and a surge of power also welled up within him. As his awakening continued to increase, he could clearly feel the strength in his body rapidly escalating. His speed, stamina, and reactions were all rapidly improving. At this moment, the scattered sand began to recoalesce, and Flint Marco's voice emerged from the sand. I haven't lost yet. As long as there's sand, I'll never be defeated. The sand quickly gathered, reforming into a sandman dozens of stories high. He swung his giant fist towards the nearest X-Men member, Beast. Although Beast was agile, he couldn't dodge such a massive attack. Just as he was about to be struck, Lin Yi suddenly vanished from his spot, instantly appearing in front of Beast, raising his hand to block the Sandman's giant fist. Bang! The moment the fists collided, a shockwave spread out, flipping cars nearby and cracking deep grooves in the ground. Lin Yi stood firm, the muscles on his arms slightly bulging. He had actually taken the Sandman's full-force blow head-on. What? The Sandman's eyes were filled with disbelief. How can you have such immense strength? Lin Yi didn't answer. He just clenched his fist and punched the Sandman in the chest. The punch directly pierced through the Sandman's body, sending sand flying everywhere. The Sandman let out a scream, his body becoming unstable, yet he still struggled to coalesce. I won't give up. My daughter is still waiting for me. Your daughter wouldn't want you to be a bad guy. Lin Yi leapt up, flying to the top of Sandman's head, his eyes glowing orange-red. Under the enhancement of 15% awakening, the intermediate heat vision's temperature soared to 1500, and two beams of heat rays shot towards Sandman's head like lasers. Sandman's head instantly melted, turning into a glassy substance, no longer able to form consciousness. His massive body collapsed with a crash, transforming into a pile of immobile sand. Ding! Detected Sandman Flint generating intense shock plus despair emotions, gained 200 shock points. Ding! Detected surrounding civilians watching via mobile live stream generating intense shock plus admiration emotions, gained 1000 shock points large-scale group bonus. Ding! Accumulated shock points reached 38,000, Superman gene awakening increased to 16%. Ding! Accumulated shock points reached 40,000, Superman gene awakening increased to 18%. Ding! Accumulated shock points reached 45,000, Superman gene awakening increased to 20%. Basic attribute panel updated. Strength, 60 plus 24. Speed, 55 plus 20. Endurance, 62 plus 25. Reaction, 50 plus 16. Self-healing, 50 plus 18. IQ, 230 plus 20. New functions unlocked. 1. Heat vision, advanced, temperature approximately 3000, duration 30 seconds, cooldown 10 seconds. 1. Flight, intermediate, speed approximately 150 km per hour, duration 3 hours, cooldown 15 minutes. 1. Super breath, beginner, can blow strong winds, wind speed approximately 100 km per hour, duration 15 seconds. System evaluation. Host finally has that Superman vibe now. 20% awakening, can punch through a tank, heat vision can melt steel, flight speed faster than a fighter jet. Next time you encounter a villain, just punch them to solve it, don't waste words with them. Lin Yi landed on the ground and turned to look at the still struggling Brotherhood members. Anyone else want to continue? The Brotherhood members had just witnessed Lin Yi single-handedly block Sandman's giant fist and then take him down with one punch. Such power was far beyond their comprehension. No one dared to resist anymore, they all put down their weapons. Professor X slowly came to Lin Yi's side. Lin Yi, your potential far exceeds my imagination. If it weren't for you and Thor, we would have had a very difficult time winning this battle today. Just doing what needed to be done. Lin Yi smiled, then suddenly heard a familiar sound of armor flying from a distance. On the 18th floor corridor of Stark Tower, gunshots and screams echoed one after another. Harley Quinn, in her iconic red and blue outfit, held a modified submachine gun. She laughed maniacally as she fired at Pepper ahead. Miss Pepper, don't run. We just want to invite you for a coffee. Pepper, in a business suit, her hair disheveled and one high heel missing, clutched her chest, breathing heavily. Behind her were two surviving Stark Industries security guards. Don't come any closer. Tony will be here to save me soon. Pepper feigned composure, knowing that once Harley caught her, the consequences would be unimaginable. Tony. Harley sneered, pulling the trigger. Bullets hit the wall next to Pepper, sending fragments flying. He's probably in trouble himself right now, isn't he? I heard he's dying, poisoned by the reactor he built. Pepper's heart sank, but she dared not think too much, only continuing to run until she reached a damaged floor. The walls here had been broken through by the lizard during the previous battle. Outside was a drop of tens of meters, with no escape route. Run. Why aren't you running anymore? Harley, with a dozen thugs, surrounded her, a crazy smile on her face. Miss Pepper, what if I push you off? Will Tony go crazy? I really want to see what Iron Man looks like when he loses the person he loves most. The thugs also joined in the laughter, closing in on Pepper step by step. Pepper closed her eyes, feeling a bit desperate. She knew she might not escape this time. Just then, a red figure streaked past the window, accompanied by the roar of armor. A metal fist suddenly smashed through the wall, sending the thug in front flying. Pepper opened her eyes and cried out in surprise, Tony. Tony, wearing the Mark 6 armor, hovered outside the window. His helmet slowly opened, revealing his tired but still confident face. Yes, it's me, Pepper, Tony said, then turned to Harley. Harley Quinn, long time no see. It seems you haven't spent enough time in prison to learn how to be a human being. Iron Man. Harley's eyes lit up, and she raised her submachine gun, firing at Tony. I was just looking for you. Jerome said it would be even less fun if you died. Tony's armor's shoulders opened, and two small missiles launched, accurately hitting the ground next to Harley. The shockwave from the explosion knocked Harley and the thugs flying. Tony flew into the corridor, and the armor's palms emitted pale blue energy beams, quickly dealing with all the thugs. Harley struggled to get up, trying to escape through the window, but Tony grabbed her with the armor's arm. Trying to run. Not so easy. Tony's voice came through the armor. Tell me, where is the Joker? What's your plan? Harley struggled frantically, but she couldn't break free from the armor's grip. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Tony didn't have time to waste on her. He raised his hand and punched Harley in the back of the neck, knocking her unconscious, then told the arriving SHIELD agents, take her away, don't let her cause trouble again. The agents took Harley and quickly left. Tony opened his faceplate and walked over to Pepper, reaching out to straighten her disheveled hair. Are you alright? Are you hurt? I'm fine. Pepper threw herself into Tony's arms. Tony, Harley just said you were dying, is that true? Tony's body stiffened for a moment, then he gently patted Pepper's back, his tone light. Don't listen to her nonsense, I'm perfectly fine. I just had a small problem before, but it's resolved now. He didn't tell Pepper about his previous palladium poisoning, he didn't want her to worry about him again. You go to the safe house with the SHIELD agents first. I'll go deal with the Joker, and then I'll come find you. Pepper nodded. Although still a bit worried, she knew Tony's temper and didn't ask any more questions. Tony watched Pepper being led away by the agents, then closed his faceplate again and said into his communicator, Jarvis, locate the Joker. I'm going to pay him a visit. On the rooftop of the Osborne Industries building. Soon, all of New York will become my testing ground. Norman, clad in his Green Goblin armor, hovered on his glider above the rooftop. Everyone will become new humans, as powerful as me. They will worship me, revere me. Tony Stark, Bruce Wayne, all you so-called elites, will be trampled underfoot by me. Norman, do you think you can control New York with a serum? You're just a madman blinded by power and strength. Norman fired 2 pumpkin bombs from his glider, soaring towards Bruce. Bruce reacted swiftly, immediately throwing 2 batarangs that accurately struck the pumpkin bombs' fuses. The bombs exploded in midair, causing no damage. Is that all you've got? Bruce snorted, using the momentum to leap and dodge the bullets fired from Norman's glider machine gun. At the same time, he threw a smoke bomb, and white smoke instantly enveloped the entire rooftop, obscuring Norman's vision. Coward. Hiding in the smoke. Norman roared, steering his glider wildly through the smoke, trying to find Bruce's position. Bang! Bruce punched Norman's helmet, making Norman dizzy. The glider lost control and crashed into the rain device. Bruce pulled out his taser and aimed it at Norman's glider. ZZZZT. Norman screamed, falling from the glider and crashing heavily onto the rooftop. The glider, out of control, hit the edge of the rooftop, exploding and catching fire. Norman struggled to get up, but found his armor had been damaged by the taser and was no longer functional. Bruce walked up to him, pressing a batarang against his throat. What's the control password for the rain device? Never. Bruce didn't waste words. He pulled out a small device from his waist and connected it to the rain device's control panel. This was a cracking device prepared for him by Alfred, capable of quickly bypassing the passwords of most electronic equipment. A few seconds later, the device emitted a beep, and the rain device's screen displayed, password cracked, device shut down. Done. Bruce put away the device and said into his wrist communicator, Alfred, send the Batmobile to Osborne Industries. Received, Master. The Batmobile is already waiting downstairs. Be careful. Alfred's voice came through. Bruce pulled Norman up, handcuffed him with specialized metal cuffs, then escorted him towards the rooftop elevator. In Times Square, New York, everyone who participated in the battle was now gathered. The X-Men, S.H.I.E.L.D. agents, Bruce, Tony, Thor, Lin Yi, Gwen, Peter, everyone stood in the center of the square, and in front of them, handcuffed, were Magneto, Mystique, Sandman, Green Goblin, Norman, Harley, and others. Captain George, with NYPD officers, was clearing the scene. Medics were treating injured civilians and heroes. Although the square was still somewhat chaotic, order had been restored. It's finally over. Peter sighed in relief, sitting on the ground and rubbing his sore arms. I never thought such a huge chaos would happen in New York. Gwen sat beside Peter and nodded. Luckily, we all worked together, otherwise, we really wouldn't have made it. Beast Hank walked up to Lin Yi and patted his shoulder. Lin Yi, thanks to you and Thor's help this time, otherwise, it would have been very difficult for us to win today. Just luck. Lin Yi smiled, his gaze sweeping over the handcuffed criminals, but he didn't see the Joker. By the way, where's the Joker? We don't seem to have caught him yet. No sooner had he spoken than the large screen in the square suddenly lit up. The face of Jerome, the Joker, appeared on the screen. He was wearing a tattered purple suit, his face painted with exaggerated clown makeup. Oh, my friends, are you looking for me? The Joker's voice, filled with maniacal laughter, echoed across the entire square through the large screen. Don't worry, I'll be finding you all soon. Everyone became alert. Tony immediately spoke into his communicator. Jarvis, locate the signal source of the big screen. Sir, the signal source is New York's underground pipe system, covering the entire city. Jarvis's voice came through. Furthermore, according to sensor readings, there's a large amount of gas flowing in the underground pipes, suspected to be some kind of chemical poison gas. The Joker seemed to have heard Jarvis's words and laughed even more gleefully. That's right. You guessed it. I had people send a specially concocted poison gas through the underground pipes to every corner of New York. This is my masterpiece, improved from Crane's fear gas. It can damage your central nervous system and DNA protein chains. In about 10 minutes, you'll all die and turn into a bunch of unconscious puppets. The crowd in the square instantly fell into a panic. Some started screaming, some tried to flee, but were stopped by police officers. Don't panic, everyone. We'll find a way. Captain George shouted loudly, but couldn't quell the people's fear. Bruce spoke into his communicator. Alfred, is there any way to cut off the poison gas supply to the underground pipes? Master, the underground pipe system is too complex, and the gas has already started to spread. We don't have enough time to cut it off. Alfred sighed. As I said before, some people don't need money or power, they just want to watch the world burn. Tony frowned and began to operate on his armor's control panel. Jarvis, analyze the gas composition and see if an antidote can be quickly produced. Sir, the gas composition is extremely complex, containing multiple unknown chemical substances. Producing an antidote would take at least half an hour, and we only have 10 minutes. Jarvis's voice came through. Everyone fell into despair. 10 minutes was nowhere near enough time for them to do anything. Gwen tightly clutched Lin Yi's hand. Lin Yi, what do we do? Lin Yi didn't answer, just looked at the Joker on the big screen, and suddenly started to laugh. He turned around and said to everyone, Don't be afraid, actually, the Joker's gas has already been replaced by me. What? Everyone was stunned. Lin Yi walked to the center of the square, picked up a megaphone. Earlier in Crane's lab, I discovered that he not only had above-ground storage points but also 3 underground storage points, containing a large amount of fear gas. I guessed the Joker might use this gas, so I had SHIELD agents replace it with harmless fruit-flavored gas in advance, the kind we usually smell at amusement parks. As soon as Lin Yi finished speaking, a faint orange scent wafted through the square. This was the gas spreading from the underground pipes. Someone tentatively inhaled, and found there was no discomfort at all. Instead, it felt quite refreshing. It really is fruit-flavored. A little girl shouted excitedly, "Mommy, it smells so good." The panic in the square instantly vanished, replaced by a wave of relieved laughter. Everyone looked at Lin Yi, their eyes filled with shock. The Joker on the big screen had clearly realized something was wrong. For the first time, he roared in anger, "Impossible. This is impossible. I'll kill you all." The Joker's voice grew increasingly frantic, and the screen suddenly went black. Jarvis had cut off his signal. Tony immediately spoke into his communicator. "Jarvis, pinpoint the Joker's location. We must catch him this time." "Sir, the signal source has been locked to an abandoned subway station in Brooklyn. I have already notified SHIELD agents and NYPD, and they are on their way." Jarvis's voice came through. Ding. Detected strong shock plus gratitude emotions from top-tier individuals like Tony, Bruce, Thor, Professor X, etc., gaining 2,000 shock points top-tier individual collective bonus. Ding. Detected strong shock plus adoration emotions from 1,000 civilians in the square, gaining 10,000 shock points large-scale group bonus. Ding. Detected strong shock plus despair emotions from the apprehended villains, gaining 800 shock points. Ding. Accumulated shock points reached 60,000. Superman gene awakening degree increased to 25%. Ding. Accumulated shock points reached 75,000. Superman gene awakening degree increased to 30%. Basic attribute panel updated. Strength. 80 plus 20. Speed. 80 plus 25. Endurance. 85 plus 23. Reaction. 75 plus 25. Self-healing. 70 plus 20. IQ. 250 plus 20. New functions unlocked. Heat vision top tier temperature approximately 5000. Duration 60 seconds. Cooldown 5 seconds can melt through any known metal. Flight advanced speed approximately 300 kilometers per hour. Duration 10 hours. Cooldown 5 minutes can break the sound barrier. Super breath intermediate can blow strong winds, wind speed 200 kilometers per hour, or inhale air to create a vacuum. Duration 30 seconds. Microscopic vision beginner can see microscopic particle structures. Duration 20 seconds. System evaluation. Host is now a walking nuclear bomb. At 30% awakening, your strength can overturn an aircraft carrier, your heat vision can melt mountains, and your flight speed is faster than a fighter jet from now on. New York's safety is in your hands. But don't get too arrogant, it won't do any good. Gwen looked at Lin Yi, her eyes full of admiration and love. She stepped forward and hugged Lin Yi. "Lin Yi, you rascal. I'm so proud of you." The sun finally rose, golden sunlight spilling across the square. People, relieved after the ordeal, embraced each other, cheering the names of the heroes. Meanwhile, in an abandoned subway station in Brooklyn, the Joker was surrounded by SHIELD agents and NYPD. He looked at the approaching agents, yet showed no fear, instead laughing maniacally. "This game isn't over. I'll be back. I'll make New York remember my name." The agents ignored his raving, stepped forward, subdued him, and put him in a police car. The siren faded into the distance, and the streets of New York returned to their former bustling prosperity. Gwen whispered in his arms. "Now that you're a hero, what do you want to do next?" "Next, I want to go for breakfast. I remember a Chinese restaurant on 5th Avenue, their steamed buns are excellent. Care to join me, Miss Gwen?" "Of course. Good morning, Mr. Lin." "Good morning, Miss Gwen." System hint. Host's current accumulated shock points are 85,800, Superman gene awakening degree is 30%, and Superman core abilities have been unlocked. Subsequent awakening can be increased by encountering more special individuals such as Odin, Thanos, etc., and resolving larger-scale crises, ultimately unlocking 100% Superman gene and achieving omnipotent Skyfather level strength. When you lose everything you love, you are no longer the prey, but the hunter. Oswald Chesterfield Cobblepot, Gotham 2014-2019. A month later, a dimly lit underground arena in Queens, New York. The humid air was thick with the stench of sweat, blood, and cheap alcohol. The only light came from flickering neon signs overhead, red and purple intertwined, painting the entire space in an eerie hue. This was the Dark Claw Club, Oswald Cobblepot, the Penguin's underground kingdom. The Bloodlust Night boxing matches every Wednesday were the most insane spectacle in New York's underworld. Tonight, the atmosphere was even more fervent than usual. The circular boxing ring was packed with people, burly gangster thugs, scantily clad women, and gamblers with greedy eyes. Everyone held beer mugs aloft, roaring the same name. Rourke. Rourke. Tear him apart. Rourke. Shove his head up his ass. On the elevated platforms on either side of the ring, the Penguin, dressed in a black tuxedo and leaning on a jewel-encrusted metal cane, slowly paced. A shrewd smile played on his face as his gaze swept over the frenzied audience below, like a predator sizing up its prey. Boss, Rourke is ready. A bodyguard in a black suit quickly walked up behind the Penguin and reported in a low voice. This challenger doesn't look like much. He probably won't last around. I hear he's called Invincible Fire Wheel. What a ridiculous name, the Penguin scoffed, tapping his cane on the ground with a crisp, thump-thump sound. Once Rourke tears him apart, tonight's stakes will triple. The cheers around them suddenly grew louder. The Penguin's gaze shifted to the entrance of the arena. There, a tall figure slowly emerged, instantly drawing all eyes. The lighting in the passageway was dim. Rourke wore a black hooded robe, the hood pulled low, obscuring most of his face, revealing only a sharp jawline and tightly pressed lips. He stood at 2 meters 2, and even wrapped in the black robe, his bulging muscles were evident. Each step he took caused the ground of the passageway to tremble slightly. Behind him followed 4 equally tall bodyguards, carrying iron chains and baseball bats, their eyes fiercely scanning their surroundings. It's Rourke. Someone in the audience shrieked. He's here. This challenger is dead. Rourke broke the arm of that 2-meter-5 brute last time. I bet $10,000 on Rourke. I'm definitely going to clean up this time. The audience's roars surged like a tide, but Rourke paid them no mind. He even yawned somewhat lazily, his fingers unconsciously caressing the muscles beneath his black robe. 10 consecutive victories had made him lose interest in such crushing battles. In his eyes, all challengers were lambs to the slaughter. No one could pose a threat to him. He stepped into the ring, his black robe sliding off to reveal a bronze-colored physique. Every muscle was like meticulously sculpted rock, covered in scars of varying depths. The most prominent was a 30-centimeter-long knife scar on his chest, extending from his left shoulder to his right hip. He lifted his head, his hood falling back to reveal a chiseled face with icy eyes and a hint of disdainful smile at the corner of his mouth. Just then, Lin Yi entered from the other side of the arena. He wore a simple gray t-shirt and jeans, white sneakers, and carried a pair of black boxing gloves. He looked like a college student fresh from the gym, completely out of place in the bloodthirsty atmosphere. He stood 1 meter 80, with well-proportioned muscles, lacking Rourke's exaggerated bulk. Standing before Rourke, he appeared remarkably slender. Who's that? Someone in the audience asked in confusion. Is he the challenger? Haha, no way. He looks like he can't even take one of Rourke's punches. Yellow-skinned kid, hurry up and get out. Don't come here to die. Insults came from the audience, but Lin Yi ignored them, simply walking silently into the ring and beginning to put on his gear. His movements were light, his eyes calm, as if he wasn't there for an underground boxing match, but a regular sports competition. Rourke looked at Lin Yi, his disdain growing stronger. Kid, if you surrender now, you can still keep your life. Otherwise, once I make my move, you won't even have a chance to regret it. Lin Yi looked up and smiled. No need. Let's begin. Courting death. Rourke snorted, ignoring Lin Yi, and turned to a corner of the ring to stretch. At that moment, a ring girl in a red bikini walked into the ring. She had a fiery figure and a charming smile, holding up a sign that read, "Round 1 inch." As she walked around the center of the ring. When she reached Rourke, she deliberately paused, winked at him, and said in a sweet voice, "Mr. Rourke, good luck, I'm rooting for you." Rourke opened his eyes, a lewd grin on his face, and patted the ring girl's backside. "When I win, come have a drink with me tonight." The ring girl giggled and ran off the stage, and the audience erupted in a lewd roar of laughter. The referee, a burly bald man, walked into the ring, holding a megaphone, and shouted in a gruff voice, "Welcome to the Dark Claw Club's Bloodlust Wednesday boxing match. Tonight, we will witness the werewolf, Rourke's 11th victory. His challenger is the kid who calls himself Invincible Fire Wheel." Invincible Fire Wheel. What a ridiculous name. Someone in the audience scoffed. The referee continued to shout, "Rules of the match. Unlimited rounds, unlimited moves, any form of attack is allowed until one party falls unconscious or dies. Now, let the match begin." As soon as the referee's words fell, Rourke charged at Lin Yi like a leopard. His speed far exceeded his size, and his fist, whistling through the air, aimed for Lin Yi's chest. The force of that punch was at least 500 kilograms. If an ordinary person were hit, all their ribs would surely break, resulting in instant death. The audience erupted in cheers. "Kill him. Punch him to death." Lin Yi, however, stood still. It wasn't until Rourke's fist was about to hit his chest that he suddenly sidestepped, easily dodging the punch. Rourke's fist slammed into the ring ropes behind Lin Yi, causing a loud bang and a violent tremor. Oh, quite agile, Rourke was a little surprised. He hadn't expected this seemingly ordinary kid to have such quick reflexes. But he still didn't take it to heart, turning and throwing another punch, this time aiming for Lin Yi's head. Lin Yi dodged again, and at the same time, reached out and gently patted Rourke's arm. "Rourke Vance, former enforcer for the Scorpion Gang. 3 years ago, you killed the Scorpion Gang's boss when your mutant abilities went out of control, and the Penguin took you in, right?" Rourke's body suddenly stiffened, his fist hanging in midair, his eyes filled with shock. "How do you know my identity?" Almost no one in the underworld knew his identity, and the Penguin had always helped him conceal it. How could this kid know so much? Want to know? Beat me first. Lin Yi smiled. Rourke's eyes instantly turned fierce. He realized that this kid in front of him was definitely not an ordinary person. He no longer held back his strength, letting out a low growl as his muscles began to swell. His original height of 2.2 meters instantly surpassed 3 meters. Black fur erupted from his skin, covering his entire body. His fingers transformed into sharp claws, his teeth grew long and pointed, and his eyes turned blood red. He had transformed. It's a werewolf. Rourke has transformed. The audience below the stage screamed wildly. Tear him apart. Tear him apart with your claws. After transforming, Rourke's aura became even more ferocious. He stared at Lin Yi and said in a hoarse voice, "Kid, you've successfully angered me. Now, I'll make you die a very painful death." Lin Yi looked at the transformed Rourke and nodded with satisfaction. "That's more like it. Before, I thought I was bullying an ordinary person. Arrogant." Rourke roared, leaping towards Lin Yi. His claws, glinting coldly, aimed for Lin Yi's throat. He wanted to deliver a fatal blow. The audience below held their breath. Some even closed their eyes, expecting to see Lin Yi torn to shreds in the next second. Penguin also smiled, thinking the match was already over. But just as Rourke's claws were about to touch Lin Yi's throat, Lin Yi moved. His body suddenly vanished from its original spot. The 80 points of speed brought by 30% awakening allowed his movement speed to exceed 300 kilometers per hour. To ordinary people, he was like an afterimage. He reappeared behind Rourke, clenching his right fist, concentrating all his strength into it. 80 points of strength, 16 times that of an ordinary person, plus the special bonus from the Superman gene. The power of this punch was enough to overturn a tank. Bang! Lin Yi's fist landed heavily on Rourke's back. There was no earth-shattering roar, only a dull thud. But Rourke's massive body, as if struck by a train, instantly lost all its strength. He arced through the air and crashed heavily onto the boxing ring. Boom! The wooden planks of the ring instantly cracked into a spiderweb pattern, and dust billowed. Rourke lay motionless on the ground, blood flowing from the corner of his mouth, staining the wooden planks of the ring. He didn't even have time to let out a cry of agony before losing consciousness. The entire venue instantly fell silent. All the spectators stared with wide eyes, unable to believe what they were seeing. Rourke, who had won 10 consecutive matches and transformed into a 3-meter-tall werewolf, was knocked down by that yellow-skinned kid with a single punch. And it was a one-hit kill. A few seconds later, someone, who reacted first, let out a gasp. He won. Immediately after, the entire venue erupted in even crazier cheers than before, but this time the cheers were for Lin Yi. Invincible wind fire wheel. Invincible wind fire wheel. So powerful. One punch to kill Rourke. I actually mocked him just now, I must have been blind. Penguin's smile froze on his face. He stared at Lin Yi in the boxing ring, his heart filled with shock. He hadn't expected this seemingly ordinary kid to possess such terrifying strength. Ding. Detected Rourke's intense shock plus fear before unconsciousness. Gained 300 points of shock value. Ding. Detected Oswald Cobblepot's intense shock plus apprehension. Gained 250 points of shock value, special bonus for underground faction leader. Ding. Detected intense shock plus fanaticism from 500 audience members below the stage. Gained 5,000 points of shock value, large-scale group bonus. Ding. Cumulative shock value reached 91,300 points. Superman gene awakening increased to 31%. Ding. Cumulative shock value reached 95,000 points. Superman gene awakening increased to 32%. Ding. Cumulative shock value reached 100,000 points. Superman gene awakening increased to 33%. Basic attribute panel updated. Strength. 88 plus 8. Speed. 88 plus 8. Endurance. 92 plus 7. Reaction. 82 plus 7. Self-healing. 78 plus 8. IQ. 260 plus 10. System evaluation. Host, that punch was so cool. Instantly killing a 3-meter-tall werewolf directly turned the audience from mocking to fanatical. Even Penguin was scared by you. At 33% awakening, your strength is almost breaking 100. Next time you encounter a villain, just solve it with one punch, don't waste words with them. However, no new functions have been unlocked yet, probably have to wait until 40% awakening. Keep up the good work. Lin Yi flexed his wrist, walked over to Rourke, and nudged his body with his foot. There was no reaction. He turned and walked towards the prize box by the side of the ring. Inside was $200,000 in cash, contained in a black cloth bag. He picked up the prize bag, weighed it in his hand, smiled at the stunned Penguin below, and then stepped down from the ring. Lin Yi exited through the back door of the Dark Claw Club. Outside was a narrow alley where the streetlights were out, with only moonlight illuminating the path. A black Lincoln sedan was parked at the alley's entrance. Gwen was leaning against the car, holding a black custom suit. Seeing Lin Yi emerge, she immediately went to meet him. Lin Yi, you're finally out. Gwen's face showed concern as she reached out to touch Lin Yi's body. Are you okay? Are you hurt? I'm fine, just threw one punch, it was easy. Lin Yi smiled, holding up the prize bag. Look, $200,000. Now we have over 700,000, one step closer to buying a house. Gwen, however, was a little angry. Who's talking about money? I was worried about you. Oh, by the way, a few thugs tried to hit on me just now, but I beat them away. Lin Yi was stunned for a moment, then laughed. My Gwen is so amazing, she can even protect herself now. Of course. Gwen puffed out her chest. I'm Spider-Woman now, a few petty thugs are no match for me. But, next time, can we not come to places like this? It's dirty and messy, and there are so many bad people. I'm worried something might happen to you. And, who chooses an underground boxing ring for a date? Lin Yi reached out and hugged Gwen, kissing her on the lips, then said softly, I'm sorry, it's my fault. I just wanted to save enough money quickly to buy a house for us. He added in his heart, and also earn shock value. Gwen softly hummed in his arms, like a cat purring. What are our chances of beating him? Rounding it up, it's pretty much zero. Eddie Brock asking Venom in front of the villain riot, from Venom, 2018. In the dimly lit visitors' room of a New York prison, the air was thick with the smell of disinfectant. Flint Marco, dressed in a gray prison uniform, sat on the other side of the table, his hair disheveled, his face covered in stubble, and his eyes filled with exhaustion and guilt. Ever since he was defeated by Lin Yi, he had been in prison, missing his daughter Penny every day. Mr. Marco, long time no see. Lin Yi sat opposite Marco, with Gwen beside him. Marco looked up, and seeing Lin Yi, his eyes held a complex expression. Mr. Lin, why have you come to see me? I've come to tell you some good news. Lin Yi smiled and pulled a tablet computer from his pocket. Mr. Stark has arranged for the Stark Foundation, under his name, to provide full medical assistance to your daughter, Penny. Penny is now receiving treatment at the best hospital in New York, and the doctors say her condition has stabilized. She should recover in a few months. Marco's eyes lit up instantly. Really? Penny, she's really okay. Lin Yi stood up, took off his custom suit, walked over to Marco, and draped it over him. Yes, Mr. Marco, don't be sad anymore. Penny is doing very well now, and you should also reform well. Wear this suit for now. Later, when you video call Penny, don't let her see you in your current state and worry about you. Marco froze, looking at the suit on him. It was an expensive custom suit, with soft fabric and exquisite craftsmanship. He had never worn such fine clothes in his life. He looked up at Lin Yi, his eyes full of gratitude. Mr. Lin, thank you for everything you've done for me. I did so many bad things before, destroyed New York, and hurt so many people, yet you not only didn't blame me but also helped me take care of Penny. I really don't know how to thank you. Don't thank me. Lin Yi smiled. Everyone makes mistakes sometimes, what's important is to know how to repent. He took out the tablet and dialed Penny's video call. Soon, Penny's smiling face appeared on the screen. Dad. Penny. Marco's voice choked up. He straightened the suit on him, trying to look as presentable as possible. Dad is doing well, don't worry. You must cooperate with the doctors for your treatment, and when Dad comes back, I'll take you to Disneyland, okay? Okay. Penny said happily. Dad, your suit looks so good, is it new? Yes, Mr. Marco found a very good job at Stark Industries, Lin Yi explained proactively, but he's too busy to come back for now. Dad will come to see you when he has time, Marco said. Uncle Lin is in charge at Stark, and he takes good care of Dad at the company. Uncle Lin is so kind. Penny smiled at Lin Yi in the camera. Uncle Lin, thank you for taking care of my dad. When I get out of the hospital, I'll treat you to my mom's apple pie, it's delicious. Lin Yi smiled and said, all right, I'm looking forward to it. Penny, you must take good care of yourself and get well soon. The video call lasted for half an hour, until the prison guard came to remind them that time was up, and Marco reluctantly hung up the phone. He looked at Lin Yi and said solemnly, Mr. Lin, I promise you, I will definitely reform well. I will spend the rest of my life making up for the mistakes I made. Lin Yi nodded. I believe you. As soon as they reached the prison entrance, Lin Yi saw a familiar figure. Harry Osborn. He was wearing a white shirt and black trousers, his hair neatly combed, looking much more mature than before. Seeing Lin Yi and Gwen, he immediately came forward to greet them. Lin Yi. Gwen. Harry's face was smiling. I was just looking for you guys, I didn't expect to run into you here. Harry, what are you doing here? Lin Yi asked, puzzled, are you here to see your father? Yes. Harry nodded, I just saw my father, he's doing very well now. He said that after you injected him with the serum you developed, the Green Goblin's personality became weaker and weaker. He can now clearly control his consciousness, and his mental state is much better than before. He also asked me to apologize on his behalf, to you and all the citizens of New York, for his previous actions of destroying New York. Lin Yi smiled with relief. That's good. Your father's nature isn't actually bad, he was just controlled by the Green Goblin's personality. Now that the Green Goblin's personality is weak, he can return to normal. Father also told me to manage Oscorp well, not to do those dangerous researches anymore, and instead wants to cooperate with Stark Industries to work on some projects beneficial to society, like your bio-regeneration project. That's great. Lin Yi nodded. Oscorp has many excellent scientists and equipment. If it can cooperate with Stark Industries, the bioregeneration project can be advanced more quickly, helping more people like Dr. Connors. Speaking of Dr. Connors, Harry said, I visited him yesterday. After injecting your improved bioregeneration serum, he has grown a new right arm. His mental state is also very good now. He also asked me to apologize on his behalf, to you and everyone who was hurt, for his previous transformation into the lizard and destroying New York. It's the best outcome that Dr. Connors can return to normal. In fact, his bioregeneration project itself is very good, it was just misused. Lin Yi smiled. Harry looked at Lin Yi. Lin Yi, I'm really grateful to you. If it weren't for you, my father might never have escaped the Green Goblin's control, and Dr. Connors might have remained the lizard forever. Just did what needed to be done. Lin Yi smiled. Just then, a hurried sound of footsteps came, accompanied by the clicking of camera shutters. A man in a black jacket, accompanied by 3 others also carrying equipment, quickly walked over and stood in front of Lin Yi and Harry. The man had a press badge around his neck, with New York Chronicle printed on it. Mr. Lin, Mr. Harry Osborne, excuse me for a few minutes. The man handed a voice recorder to Lin Yi. I'm Eddie Brock, an investigative reporter for the New York Chronicle. I'd like to ask, is the real purpose of Stark Industries acquiring Oscorp's bioregeneration project to make a profit? Also, has the Green Goblin Norman Osborn's super soldier serum been secretly taken over by Stark Industries? Do you have any plans to use this dangerous serum for other research? A series of sharp questions were thrown out, and the air instantly became tense. Harry frowned. Mr. Brock, your questions are baseless. The bioregeneration project is to help more people in need, not some profit-making tool. As for the super soldier serum, it was destroyed long ago, and Stark Industries has not taken it over. Lin Yi also frowned. He was initially a bit impatient with the reporter's questioning, but when he heard the name, Eddie Brock, his heart suddenly skipped a beat. You just said your name is Eddie Brock. Eddie was taken aback, clearly not expecting Lin Yi to suddenly ask this. That's right, I'm Eddie Brock. Why, Mr. Lin, do you know me? No, but I've heard your name. Lin Yi's mind raced, his gaze fixed on Eddie's face. Lin Yi suddenly said, Mr. Brock, I'd like to ask you a personal question. Have you noticed any physical abnormalities recently? For example, suddenly becoming irritable, gaining strength, or strange black patterns appearing on your skin? Eddie was completely bewildered. He had come to inquire about Stark Industries' dark secrets, so why had the conversation suddenly shifted to his health? Not only was Eddie confused, but Gwen and Harry, who were standing nearby, were also stunned. Gwen tugged at Lin Yi's sleeve and whispered, Lin Yi, why are you suddenly asking about this? Lin Yi didn't explain, he just stared at Eddie, waiting for his answer. Eddie frowned, thought carefully, and shook his head. Physical abnormalities? No, not at all. My routine has been very regular lately. Other than occasionally staying up late to finish a draft, I haven't felt any discomfort. Mr. Lin Yi, why are you asking this? What does it have to do with my previous question? Nothing, just asking casually. Lin Yi breathed a sigh of relief. It seemed Eddie hadn't come into contact with Venom yet. He pulled out his personal business card from his pocket and handed it to Eddie. Besides his name and phone number, it also had the address of Stark Industries Biological Laboratory. Mr. Brock, this is my business card. If you ever feel any physical abnormalities in the future, no matter how small the detail, you can call me or come directly to Stark Industries to find me. I am a researcher in the field of biochemistry, and perhaps I can help you take a look. Eddie took the business card, looked at the information on it, and was utterly confused. What was going on? Lin Yi, who had just been annoyed by his persistent questioning, had suddenly become so concerned about him. He even proactively gave him his business card and told him to find him if he felt unwell. Did he have some kind of ulterior motive? Or was Stark Industries truly hiding some unspeakable secret and trying to bribe him in this way? Eddie's eyes were full of suspicion. Mr. Lin Yi, what do you mean by this? I'm just here for a normal interview, and I don't need your concern. If you don't want to answer my questions, just say so directly, there's no need for these little tricks. I'm not playing any tricks, I'm just genuinely warning you. Lin Yi looked at Eddie's wary expression, knowing that no matter what he said now, Eddie wouldn't believe him, so he could only smile helplessly. You don't have to believe me, but please remember, if you really experience any physical abnormalities, you must contact me immediately. It won't do you any harm. With that, Lin Yi no longer paid attention to Eddie, turned to Gwen and Harry, and said, "Let's go, it's time to head back." Gwen and Harry nodded, followed Lin Yi's footsteps, and got into the Lincoln parked by the roadside. The car slowly drove away. Gwen looked through the window at Eddie, who was still standing there, holding the business card, his brows furrowed, clearly still pondering Lin Yi's actions. "Lin Yi, why were you suddenly so concerned about that reporter?" Gwen couldn't help but ask. "Also, what was that about you asking him about physical abnormalities?" Lin Yi sighed, looking at the gradually receding prison outside the window, and softly said, "Because I know he might encounter some trouble in the future. If I can warn him in advance, perhaps I can help him avoid some bad things from happening." He didn't tell Gwen about Venom, not because he didn't want to, but because he didn't know how to explain it. He couldn't just say that he came from another world and knew that Eddie would be parasitized by an alien symbiote in the future, could he? Although Gwen still had some doubts, seeing Lin Yi's serious eyes, she didn't press further. She knew that Lin Yi never did anything meaningless, he must have his reasons for doing this. Meanwhile, Eddie Brock stood still, looking at the business card in his hand, his mind filled with confusion. He said to his colleague beside him, "What do you think Lin Yi is up to?" "Who knows?" A colleague shrugged. "Maybe he wants to bribe you to stop investigating Stark Industries. After all, they're very popular lately, and they certainly don't want any negative news." "Doesn't seem like it." Another colleague shook his head. "If he wanted to bribe you, he'd just give you money or benefits, there's no need to care about his health." Eddie frowned and put the business card into his wallet. Whatever Lin Yi's purpose, he would not give up the investigation. Stark Industries' recent actions were too significant. The bio-regeneration project, the acquisition of Oscorp Industries, there must be unknown secrets within. He was determined to uncover the truth and write a report that would shock New York. However, he always had a strange feeling. Lin Yi's gaze just now didn't seem like he was lying, instead, it seemed like he was genuinely worried about his health. This feeling made him a little uneasy. At 7:30 a.m. in New York, the morning light still carried a hint of coolness, but the glass curtain wall of the Stark Industries building was already gilded by the rising sun. The black Lincoln slowly drove into the underground parking lot. After Lin Yi parked the car, he raised his hand and rubbed his temples. Last night, he stayed in the lab for 2 extra hours to optimize the gene sequence of the bio-regeneration project, but the 30% awakening rate of the Superman gene made his energy recovery speed far exceed that of ordinary people. At this moment, apart from a faint trace of fatigue in his eyes, no other signs of tiredness were visible. He pushed open the car door, wearing a neatly pressed light gray shirt, with his sleeves rolled up to his forearms, revealing his smoothly contoured wrists. As he reached the elevator, he ran into Lily, the receptionist, a girl with brown curly hair who always wore pink dresses. She was holding a steaming hot latte. Seeing Lin Yi, her eyes lit up instantly, and she quickly walked over. "Mr. Lin Yi, good morning. This latte is specially for you. No sugar, no milk. You said last time you like it pure." Lin Yi took the coffee, feeling the warmth of the cup on his fingertips, and smiled politely. "Thank you, Lily, you're too kind. But I usually drink tea in the morning. You can keep this for yourself or give it to other colleagues." "Tea?" Lily was stunned for a moment, then showed a bright smile. "Then what kind of tea do you like, Mr. Lin Yi? I'll bring some for you next time. No need to trouble yourself, I brought my own tea." Lin Yi took out a bamboo tea caddy from his briefcase, opened the lid, and a fresh scent of orchids wafted out. "This is Longjing, pre-Qingming. The water temperature should be controlled at 85 for brewing. Too long and it will be bitter, too short and the aroma won't come out." Lily leaned in to smell it, her eyes wide. "It smells so good. Much better than the tea bags I've had before. Mr. Lin Yi, you seem to know a lot about tea. Can you teach me how to brew tea sometime?" "Of course." Lin Yi closed the tea caddy. "During the lunch break, I'll bring a portable tea set and teach you a simple brewing method." As they were talking, the elevator door opened, and Emily and Mark from the lab walked out. Emily was wearing a white lab coat, her hair tied in a high ponytail, and a bit of light blue reagent residue was still on her face. Seeing Lin Yi, she immediately waved. Lin Yi. Good morning. The parameter adjustment plan you gave for the civilian energy project yesterday was so effective. This morning's test showed that the energy conversion rate directly increased by 3%. Mr. Tony's assistant even called to praise us just now. Mark also smiled and nodded, holding a tablet computer with an email from the Empire State University research team. Professor Grant's team sent a few more questions about the cryopreservation parameters for biological samples. I looked at them for a long time and couldn't figure them out. I was just waiting for you to come and ask. Let's go to the lab first. I'll take a look. Lin Yi followed them into the elevator. Lily stood outside the elevator and waved. Mr. Lin Yi, remember to teach me how to make tea at noon. Inside the elevator, Emily asked curiously, Lin Yi, why don't you drink coffee? Everyone in the lab relies on coffee to stay awake. Drinking too much coffee can cause heart palpitations and easily affect judgment, Lin Yi explained. Tea is different, especially green tea. The tea polyphenols in it can refresh you and keep your brain clear, making you less prone to errors when processing data. If you're tired of coffee, you can try a lighter black tea, like Keeman black tea. It's good for your stomach and won't make you lose sleep easily. Mark sighed dramatically. As expected of Lin Yi, even what he drinks is so particular. Not like me, I worked too late last night and drank 3 cups of black coffee. I tossed and turned in bed all night, unable to sleep, my mind filled with those fool formulas. This morning, my eyes were as swollen as walnuts. Emily smiled and patted him. Who told you not to study hard? Every time you encounter a problem, you look for Lin Yi. If you had half of Lin Yi's brain, you wouldn't have to work overtime every day. Mark scratched his head. No way, Lin Yi is too amazing. Last time, with that inverse formula for the reactor, so many professors couldn't solve it, but Lin Yi figured it out in a few minutes and even proposed 3 optimization plans. I still haven't fully understood them. Lin Yi smiled helplessly. Don't say that. You just didn't think in that direction. Mark, you're very good at materials science. Didn't the new thermal insulation material you proposed last time help solve the heat dissipation problem for a civilian project? Everyone has their own area of expertise. As they spoke, the elevator arrived at the laboratory floor. Pushing open the glass door, the lab was already bustling. A dozen colleagues in lab coats were busy, some adjusting instruments, some recording data, and others gathered around a holographic projection screen discussing problems. When they saw Lin Yi enter, everyone stopped what they were doing, and greetings rose one after another. Lin Yi's here. Lin Yi, the biological regenerated serum sample from yesterday is ready. Do you want to test it now? Lin Yi, Mr. Stark's private lab sent a message asking when we can provide the optimized serum. Lin Yi walked to his workstation, the core area of the lab. The holographic projection screen was twice as large as the others, and next to it was a set of custom experimental equipment, as well as a small tea table with his portable tea set. He put down his briefcase, first brewed a cup of Longjing tea, watched the tea leaves slowly unfold in the hot water, and then opened his tablet to start working. Mark, let me see Professor Grant's email. Lin Yi took the tablet and quickly scanned it. The email contained questions about the parameters for cryopreserving biological samples. Professor Grant's team found that the cell viability decreased rapidly when preserving a new type of gene-edited cell, and they didn't know what the problem was. Lin Yi's fingers quickly slid across the screen, his brain working at high speed. The 30% gene awakening boosted his computing power several times. What would have taken half an hour to sort out a logical chain now took less than 5 minutes to get an idea. He pointed to the data on the screen. The problem lies in the preservation temperature and the nutrient solution ratio. The cell membrane of this type of cell is relatively thin, and a temperature of -80 is too low, which will cause the cell membrane to rupture. It should be adjusted to -65, and then add 0.3% glycerol to the nutrient solution to protect the cell membrane, and also add a little vitamin C to prevent cell oxidation. Mark's eyes widened. It's that simple. I looked at it for a long time and thought it was a problem with the equipment. I almost contacted the manufacturer to come for inspection. Try these parameters first, Lin Yi said, handing the tablet back to him. If there are still problems, let me know anytime. Emily, give me a copy of the test data for the civilian energy project. I want to see if I can further optimize the energy transmission loss rate. Emily immediately transmitted the data. Lin Yi opened the holographic projection, and a complex energy transmission model appeared on the screen. He slid his fingers in the air, adjusting several key nodes in the model. A light blue energy flow circulated within the model, and the loss rate numbers continuously decreased. From the previous 5.2%, it slowly dropped to 4.8%, and then to 4.5%. Colleagues around gathered, watching the constantly decreasing numbers on the screen, letting out exclamations. Oh my god! It dropped again. 4.5%. This is already the most advanced level, isn't it? Lin Yi is too amazing. Just a few adjustments and there's such a big improvement. At the same time, Lin Yi kept hearing system prompts. Shock value plus 100, shock value plus 80. Lin Yi frowned, feeling it wasn't enough. The transmission lines here can be further optimized. Replacing the current copper core wires with superconducting materials should reduce the loss rate to below 4%. Emily, contact the materials department and ask them if they have suitable superconducting materials. Prioritize environmentally friendly ones that won't pollute the environment. Okay. I'll go now. Emily excitedly ran off. Lin Yi took a sip of tea, and just as he was about to handle the request from Stark's private lab, Pepper's assistant, Sophia, walked in. Sophia was wearing a black business suit, holding a folder, and walked up to Lin Yi. Mr. Lin, Ms. Pepper would like you to come to her office. She says there's something important to discuss with you. Okay, I'll be right there. Lin Yi put down his teacup and followed Sophia out of the lab. As they passed the front desk, Lily leaned over and whispered. Mr. Lin Yi, are you still teaching me how to make tea at noon? Of course, Lin Yi nodded, I'll be back as soon as possible. Pepper's office was on the top floor of Stark Tower. Through the huge floor-to-ceiling windows, the entire New York cityscape could be seen. The office was simply and warmly furnished, without too many luxurious decorations. The bookshelves were filled with various books and documents, and a photo frame on the desk held a picture of Pepper and Tony, both smiling happily. Pepper was sitting behind her desk, holding a document, her brow slightly furrowed. Seeing Lin Yi enter, she immediately put down the document and smiled. Lin Yi, come sit down. Sophia, pour Lin Yi a cup of coffee. Oh, no, Lin Yi likes tea. Go to my lounge and get the pu'er tea I brought back last time and brew a pot. Sophia nodded and turned to the lounge. Lin Yi sat on the sofa, looking at Pepper. Ms. Pepper, what can I do for you? Pepper walked over and sat beside the sofa, handing Lin Yi a document. Tony asked me to thank you. Last time, you hinted that there were clues to a new element in his father's belongings. He later really found the atomic structure from the Expo miniature model and created a new reactor. Now his palladium poisoning is completely cured, and he's healthier than before. Lin Yi opened the document, which contained a vehicle transfer agreement and a check. This is. Tony had me transfer that Lincoln to you, Pepper explained. He said you helped him so much that a car was nothing. And this check is a bonus from Stark Industries for you, $100,000, as a reward for your contributions to the civilian energy project and the biological regeneration project. Tony originally wanted to give it to you himself, but he's been busy developing new suits and arguing with the military lately, so he couldn't spare the time and left it to me. Lin Yi looked at the check but didn't take it immediately. Miss Pepper, helping out is what I should do, and I've already received the project manager's salary, so there's no need for a bonus. Take it. Pepper pushed the check towards him, you've earned it. Tony said that if it weren't for you, he might still be struggling with palladium poisoning and wouldn't have the mind to do research. Besides, aren't you and Gwen saving up to buy a house? Manhattan real estate isn't cheap, so this can help ease some of your pressure. Lin Yi no longer refused, accepting the check and the transfer agreement. Thank you, Miss Pepper, and please thank Mr. Tony for me. You're welcome, Pepper smiled. Oh, and do you need any help from Stark Industries lately? Whether it's for work or personal life, as long as we can do it, we'll definitely help you. Lin Yi hesitated for a moment and then asked, Miss Pepper, do you know about the Life Foundation? Also, has General Ross had any recent movements? The Life Foundation. Pepper frowned. I know a little. Their boss is Carlton Drake, and they mainly do space exploration and biological research. They recently launched a rocket, but I heard it crashed. They said it was an accident, but I don't know the details. Why are you interested in them? I'm just a little worried, Lin Yi didn't elaborate. I heard they're doing some dangerous biological experiments, and I'm afraid it might pose a threat to New York. As for General Ross, I heard he's been chasing a Dr. Bruce Banner recently. Dr. Banner is a good person, and I thought if there was a chance, I could help him out. Pepper nodded. I'm not too clear about General Ross's affairs. Military movements are always confidential. However, I can have my people look into the specific situation of the Life Foundation and General Ross's recent actions. Once we find anything, I'll send it to your email. Thank you so much, Miss Pepper, Lin Yi said sincerely. Just then, Sophia walked in with a pot of pu'er tea, poured 2 cups, and handed them to Lin Yi and Pepper. Pepper picked up her teacup and took a sip. This pu'er is one I bought on a business trip before. It's been stored for a year, and the taste is just right. You should try it. Lin Yi took a sip, and the rich tea aroma spread in his mouth. It's very good, thank you, Miss Pepper. After they chatted about work for a while longer, Lin Yi thanked Pepper and stood up to leave. Miss Pepper, I'm heading back to the lab now. I still have a lot of work to deal with. All right, Pepper walked him to the door. Remember to rest, don't overwork yourself. In the office of the New York Chronicle, smoke lingered, and the air was filled with the smell of coffee and ink. Eddie Brock sat at his desk, piles of documents and materials in front of him, holding a worn-out voice recorder, repeatedly listening to the recording of his interview with Lin Yi from yesterday. If you ever feel any physical abnormalities, no matter how small the detail, you can call me. Lin Yi's voice came from the recorder, and Eddie frowned, his fingers unconsciously tapping on the table. He still couldn't understand why Lin Yi would suddenly care about his physical condition. Could it be that Stark Industries really had some secrets they were afraid he'd uncover? Or did Lin Yi know something he didn't? Eddie. The boss wants you in his office. Old Bill, a colleague next to him, patted his shoulder. Old Bill was a gray-haired cameraman who had covered many news stories with Eddie. It seems like an important interview assignment. Aren't you quite popular lately? The boss must have arranged a good job for you. Eddie turned off the recorder, stood up, and had a bad feeling. He walked to the boss's office door and knocked. Come in, the boss's voice came. Eddie pushed open the door. The boss, Carl, sat behind a large mahogany desk, holding a document. The office walls were adorned with many awards and photos of Carl with politicians and entrepreneurs. The most prominent was a photo of Carl and Carlton Drake, with their arms around each other's shoulders, smiling happily. Eddie, sit down. Carl pointed to the chair opposite him and pushed a document towards him. Take a look. Carlton Drake of the Life Foundation wants to do an exclusive interview. Eddie picked up the document and quickly skimmed through it. The document stated that the Life Foundation's recently launched rocket crash had caused public question, and Drake wanted to use an exclusive interview to clarify that the rocket crash was an accident, and simultaneously promote the Life Foundation's space exploration program, portraying himself as a pioneer of technology. Exclusive interview. Eddie frowned. Just to clarify, it was an accident. Aren't we going to investigate the truth behind the rocket crash? Investigate the truth. Carl extinguished his cigar in the ashtray. Eddie, we're a newspaper, not the police, nor the FBI. Drake needs a positive interview to make everyone believe him and the Life Foundation, not for you to dig up some truth. But as investigative journalists, our duty is to uncover the truth and tell the public the facts. Eddie's voice rose a few octaves. If Drake is really conducting dangerous experiments, and we don't expose him, more people will get hurt. Eddie, do you know? Carl stood up and walked over to Eddie. Drake's Life Foundation is valued at over $20 billion. He could buy our entire New York Chronicle building anytime he wants and make all of us unemployed. Do you want everyone to lose their jobs with you? Eddie fell silent. Carl sighed, his tone softening a little. Eddie, I know you have a sense of justice and want to be a good reporter. But that's just how reality is, we can't afford to offend big shots like Drake. Have you forgotten? Last year at the Globe Daily, because you reported a politician's scandal, you were sued into disrepute and even lost your job. I was the one who took you in, gave you a chance, and let you be a reporter again. Eddie remained silent. How could he forget? Last year's scandal report was actually a setup by that politician. The evidence he presented was swapped, and in the end, he not only lost his job but also almost faced a lawsuit. If it weren't for Carl taking him in, he might still be homeless on the streets. Eddie opened his mouth, wanting to say something, but couldn't. Just do it for my sake, okay? Carl patted his shoulder. After the interview, I'll give you a week off, with pay. You can go wedding dress shopping with Anne. Aren't you two getting married soon? Don't let this affect your lives. The mention of Anne made Eddie feel even worse. He and Anne had been engaged for 3 months, were renovating their house, and owed the bank a large loan. If he lost his job, their wedding might be called off. I understand. Eddie picked up the documents and turned to leave the office. Back at his desk, old Bill leaned over. How was it? A good assignment, right? I told you the boss definitely values you. Eddie said, it's an exclusive interview with the Life Foundation. Drake wants to clarify the rocket crash. Old Bill's expression changed. The Life Foundation. Eddie, be careful. I heard that Drake isn't a good person. Strange things often happen in his lab. A cleaner disappeared in there before, and they still haven't found him. I know, Eddie rubbed his temples, but the boss said we can't afford to offend him. Just then, Eddie's phone rang. It was Anne. He took a deep breath and answered the call. Anne, what's wrong? Eddie, are you going to interview Carlton Drake? Anne's voice came through. I just heard from a colleague that the Life Foundation is partnering with the New York Chronicle for an exclusive interview, and you're the reporter. Yeah, Eddie's voice dropped. The boss arranged it. I couldn't refuse. Eddie, listen to me. Anne's tone became serious. Drake is a big client of our company. When you interview him, absolutely do not throw a tantrum, and don't ask any strange questions. We're getting married soon and we're still in debt. We can't afford to offend a big shot like him. If you offend him, not only will you lose your job, but I might also be fired from the company, do you understand? Eddie said impatiently, I understand, I understand. I won't cause trouble. That's good. Anne's tone softened a little. I'll make your favorite steak tonight, and we can discuss the wedding details. Oh, the bridal shop called me. The wedding dress we picked out has arrived. Shall we go try it on this weekend? Okay. Eddie hung up the phone, looking at Anne's photo on the screen with a hint of helplessness. He took out Lin Yi's business card from his wallet and looked at it for a while. Eddie hesitated for a moment, but finally put the business card back in his wallet. He picked up the documents and said to old Bill, get ready. We're going to the Life Foundation this afternoon for the exclusive interview. At noon, people were coming and going downstairs at Stark Tower. Lin Yi, holding his car keys, walked to the black Lincoln. Just as he was about to open the car door, he suddenly heard a gasp. Wow! It's Spider-Man. No, it's Spider-Woman. So cool. She landed on that car roof. Hurry, hurry. Lin Yi looked up and saw a white figure glide through the air. A web attached to the roof of the Lincoln. Gwen, dressed in a silver-white spider suit, landed steadily on the roof. Her mask opened, revealing her brilliant smile. Lin Yi. I'm here. People around them took out their phones to take pictures, and some gathered around, excitedly discussing. Lin Yi smiled helplessly and extended his hand. Come down quickly, don't fall. This is our car now. If you scratch it, we'll have to fix it ourselves, and repairs aren't cheap. Gwen laughed and jumped down, landing in front of Lin Yi, reaching out to hug his neck. I know. I just wanted to surprise you. Look, today I stopped 3 bank robberies and rescued a kitten stuck in a tree. Pretty awesome, right? Awesome. Lin Yi ruffled her hair, but next time, don't land in front of so many people. It can cause chaos. I know. Gwen stuck out her tongue. Oh, what do you want for lunch today? I know an Italian restaurant just around the corner. Sounds good. Lin Yi opened the car door, letting Gwen in. But why are you wearing your suit? Don't you have classes? No classes this morning. Gwen buckled her seatbelt and took a burger out of her bag, taking a bite. I've been busy all morning and didn't have breakfast. I'm starving. Oh, did Ms. Potts talk to you about my internship application? I submitted my resume yesterday and haven't heard back yet. She did. Linyi started the car, and the Lincoln slowly pulled away from the curb. Ms. Potts said your resume is excellent and told HR to process it as soon as possible. You should receive a notification next week. That's great. Gwen clapped her hands excitedly, almost dropping her burger. I've wanted to work with you for a long time. The colleagues in the lab are also interesting. Last time, Emily even told me she'd teach me how to do experiments. Meanwhile, in the Life Foundation building not far away, Eddie was leading his camera crew into Drake's office. He looked at the man in a suit with a fake smile in front of him, feeling a wave of disgust, yet he had no choice but to pick up the microphone and begin this, reluctant, exclusive interview. He didn't know that this interview would completely change his life and led him to encounter the alien symbiote, Venom. The smartest I ever was when I turned into the Hulk. Bruce Banner, Avengers, Endgame, 2019. It was a humid afternoon in Rio de Janeiro, and the characteristic smell of fireworks from the favelas, carried by the damp heat, permeated the Fernandez beverage factory, through the gaps in its corrugated iron roof. The roar of machinery vibrated the ground slightly, as conveyor belts carried rows of transparent plastic bottles at a steady pace, still damp with water droplets from the sterilization tank, gleaming with a cheap luster under the dim yellow light bulbs. Bruce Banner stood by the production line, wearing a faded blue work cap pulled low, covering his wispy bangs and the anxious green eyes he always tried to hide. He wore thin latex gloves, his fingertips deftly adjusting the parameters of the bottle capping machine. This was his third month at the factory, working under the alias, Joe Hernandez, performing basic equipment maintenance. No one knew that this quiet man, who always avoided crowds, was the Hulk that General Ross had spent years hunting. Joe. The labeling machine here is jammed again. Not far away, Martha, the female worker in charge of labeling, shouted to him, her voice somewhat muffled by the machinery. Banner looked up, nodded to Martha, and walked with light steps. He always deliberately controlled the amplitude of his movements, fearing that even a slight exertion of force would trigger the Hulk's agitation within him. He quickly walked to the labeling machine and bent down to inspect the malfunction. The label reel was jammed, its edge glued to the gear. He pulled out a small screwdriver from his pocket and carefully pried open the gear, instinctively recoiling his fingertips whenever they touched the metal parts. He was too afraid of his power getting out of control. Even damaging a single machine could attract unnecessary attention. Thanks, Joe. Martha handed him a chilled guarana drink. It's too hot today. Have something cold to cool down. Banner took the drink but didn't open it, just held it in his hands, his voice low. Thanks, I'll drink it later. He rarely accepted things from others and seldom chatted with colleagues. Keeping his distance was his way of protecting himself and others. Ever since his last loss of control in New York, he had been hiding in South America, surviving on odd jobs and taking self-concocted inhibitor serums daily, terrified that the Hulk would awaken again. After fixing the labeling machine, Banner returned to his workstation. The production line continued to run, transparent bottles moving like a string of pearls along the conveyor belt towards the filling nozzle. He lowered his head to adjust the filling parameters, his finger accidentally brushing against a burr on the machine's edge. It had been hit by a heavy object yesterday, and the metal edge was as sharp as a blade. Hiss. A small cut appeared in the latex glove, and a crimson bead of blood instantly seeped from his fingertip. Banner's heart clenched, his pupils suddenly dilating. His blood was a dangerous substance that could cause gamma poisoning in ordinary people. He instinctively raised his hand, wanting to wipe the blood away, but just then, a drop of blood slid from his fingertip and fell onto the moving conveyor belt, landing precisely inside a plastic bottle that had just been sterilized but not yet filled. No! Banner almost screamed, his voice filled with panic. He grabbed the emergency stop button beside him, and with a click, the entire production line instantly halted. The roar of the machinery ceased, leaving only the surprised murmurs of his colleagues in the factory. Joe, what's wrong? What happened? Factory manager Carlos rushed out of his office, his brows tightly furrowed at the sight of the stopped production line. We're trying to meet an order right now, how can you just stop the line? Banner ignored Carlos's questioning, he quickly rushed to the conveyor belt, knelt down, his gaze fixed on the blood-stained plastic bottle. It had already slid under the filling nozzle due to inertia, and the trace of that blood drop was still visible on its body. He tremblingly reached out, carefully wiping the bottle with a tissue, with only one thought in his mind: wipe it off, no one must discover it. Joe, what exactly are you doing? Martha walked over, seeing Banner's pale face and frantic movements, feeling a little confused. It's just a bottle, isn't it? If it's dirty, just replace it. No need to be so nervous, right? No. This bottle must be disposed of. Banner said, clutching the tissue he had used to wipe the bottle tightly in his hand, stuffing it into his pocket, then picking up the plastic bottle and quickly walking towards the waste bin. There's something wrong with this bottle, it can't be used. Carlos looked at Banner's unusual behavior, feeling a bit displeased, but didn't say much more. After all, Banner usually worked very diligently and rarely made mistakes. All right, hurry up and restart the line. Don't delay production. Carlos waved his hand and turned to walk back to his office. Banner only sighed in relief after watching Carlos leave. He pressed the start button, and the production line began to operate again, the roar of machinery once more filling the factory. He stood there, his gaze sweeping over the bottles on the conveyor belt, confirming there were no other bloodstains before slowly returning to his workstation. But what he didn't know was that the drop of blood hadn't been completely wiped away. As he knelt to wipe the bottle, an even smaller droplet of blood slipped from his fingertip and fell into another plastic bottle that had just passed by. Due to the dim lighting in the factory, no one noticed this subtle anomaly. This bottle of beverage, containing Banner's blood, continued along the production line, was successfully filled, labeled, sealed, and finally, along with thousands of other bottles, packed into cardboard boxes and loaded onto a truck heading for downtown Rio de Janeiro. Banner returned to his workstation, his fingers still trembling slightly. Joe, are you okay? Why do you look so pale? Martha walked over again, handing him a towel. Are you getting heatstroke? Why don't you go rest for a bit? I'm fine. Banner took the towel, wiped the cold sweat from his forehead, and forced a smile. It might be a little hot, but it's fine. He pulled out his phone and quietly opened his encrypted email, where there was an unread message. It was from his old friend, Dr. Samuel Stearns, and the content was simple. Improved formula for the inhibitor serum has been sent. Pay attention to the dosage. Also, General Ross's troops have been active in South America recently, so be careful. Banner's brow furrowed even deeper. General Ross was still after him. Ever since he became the Hulk, General Ross had been like a shadow, pursuing him relentlessly, wanting to capture him and study his genes at all costs. He had hidden for so long, yet he still couldn't escape. As the sun set, the factory's closing bell rang. Banner packed his belongings, head bowed, and walked out of the factory with his colleagues. On the streets of the favela, children chased and played, women hung clothes to dry outside their doors, and men sat by the roadside drinking beer and chatting. This was the ordinary life he yearned for, but it was destined not to be his. He returned to his rented small attic, a room of only a dozen square meters, with old newspapers pasted on the walls and a makeshift lab bench in the corner, covered with various reagent bottles and instruments. He closed the door, locked it, then retrieved a metal box from under the lab bench, containing his blood samples and inhibitor serum. He put on gloves, carefully took out a drop of his blood, placed it in a petri dish, then added the new inhibitor serum, observing the blood's reaction. It has to work, it has to work. Banner murmured, his eyes full of anticipation. He desperately wanted to get rid of the Hulk, to be a normal person again, to live a life free from hiding and fear. But just then, his phone suddenly rang. It was an unknown number from New York. Banner hesitated for a moment, then answered the call. A gentle voice came from the other end. Is this Dr. Bruce Banner? I'm Lin Yi, head of Stark Industries' Bio-Regeneration Project. I heard you're researching gene inhibition technology, and perhaps we could collaborate. Also, I know General Ross is looking for you. If you need help, I can offer sanctuary. Banner was stunned. Lin Yi. Stark Industries. How did he know his identity? And how did he know General Ross was looking for him? He tightened his grip on the phone. Who are you? How do you know my name? I know you're very cautious right now. Lin Yi's voice remained gentle. But I have no ill intentions. I just want to help you. I've seen and studied your blood samples. I might be able to help you completely stabilize your genes. If you're willing to trust me, you can come to New York to find me. I will guarantee your safety. Banner was silent. He didn't know if Lin Yi's words were true, or if this was a trap set by General Ross. But there was a glimmer of hope in his heart. For so many years, besides Dr. Stearns, no one had dared to say they could help him stabilize his genes. If Lin Yi truly had a way, perhaps he could really escape the shadow of the Hulk. I need time to think. Banner finally said. No problem. Lin Yi said, my phone will always be on. If you change your mind, you can contact me anytime. Also, be careful not to let anyone come into contact with your blood. Your blood contains a special kind of radiation that can easily cause mutations. Remember my words, protect yourself and others. If you run into trouble, contact me anytime. The call ended, and Banner stood there, phone in hand, feeling uneasy. He didn't know if he should trust this stranger he had never met, nor did he know where his future would lead. He walked to the window, looking out at the night. The favela lights twinkled, and in the distance, downtown Rio de Janeiro was ablaze with light. I'm sorry, Banner whispered, as if apologizing to those he had harmed, and to himself. He turned back to the lab bench, picked up the new inhibitor serum, and injected himself. The cold serum entering his body slightly alleviated his anxiety. However, the hidden danger was already sown. A storm was brewing. It was a weekend morning in the living room of the Stacy household. Gwen was wrapped in an off-white cashmere blanket, practically nestled in Lin Yi's arms. The collar of her pale pink silk robe was loose, revealing a small patch of her fair collarbone. Her golden hair, dyed honey-colored by the sunlight, lay draped over Lin Yi's arm, its ends still showing the soft curls from not being brushed after waking. This female lead is too silly, Gwen mumbled, biting into a dried strawberry, her eyes glued to the TV screen. The classic Broadway musical, The Phantom of the Opera, was playing. On screen, Christine stood in the candlelit underground palace. She clearly knows the Phantom is a bad guy, but she still goes with him. If it were me, I'd have tied him up with webs and sent him to the police station ages ago. Lin Yi chuckled, his right arm around Gwen's waist, his fingertips gently brushing the daisy embroidery on her robe. With his left hand, he picked up a piece of chocolate and offered it to her mouth. Are you treating everything like a villain's rampage? This is a romance, not a robbery on the streets of New York. Gwen opened her mouth and bit the chocolate, her tongue inadvertently brushing Lin Yi's fingertips. The warm touch made Lin Yi's heart skip a beat. Chewing the chocolate, her bright blue eyes looked up at him, her eyelashes fluttering like tiny fans. But love can't be unreasonable. Besides, it's not as interesting as us. Lin Yi was amused by her little proud remark. He leaned down and kissed her forehead, wiping away a tiny chocolate crumb from the corner of her mouth. Yes, 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 our Gwen is the best, smart and brave, and even New York's Spider-Woman. No one can compare. Of course. Gwen proudly lifted her chin and snuggled deeper into Lin Yi's embrace. The blanket slipped down, revealing her gracefully curved neck. Lin Yi reached up and pulled the blanket higher, covering her shoulders. Don't catch a cold, the morning breeze is still quite chilly. I know, Gwen rubbed against his chest like a clingy kitten. By the way, why did Dad get up so early today? Usually, he sleeps in until 10 on weekends. Lin Yi recalled how George looked when he left earlier, dressed in a casual suit, carrying a briefcase. He said he was going to the police station to deal with some outstanding documents, but his shifty eyes made it obvious he wanted to leave them some space. Perhaps being a police captain makes his work busier, Lin Yi said with a smile. After all, although New York's public safety is better now, there are still many follow-up matters to handle. Gwen simply said, oh, and didn't ask further, refocusing her attention on the TV. On screen, the Phantom, wearing his mask, played the organ, the melody both sorrowful and magnificent. Lin Yi watched with her for a while, his fingers unconsciously tracing circles on her waist. The faint scent of citrus shampoo from her hair mingled with the sun-baked smell of the blanket, filling his heart with a sense of calm warmth. This was probably the life he most desired after transmigrating to this world, having the person he loved by his side, not constantly worrying about battles, and being able to peacefully enjoy weekend moments. After a while, the musical ended. Gwen stretched, her supple waist gently twisting in Lin Yi's arms. The hem of her robe rode up slightly, revealing a small section of her fair calf. Let's change the channel, how about watching some news? She picked up the remote, her pink-painted fingernail lightly tapping a button. Lin Yi nodded, tucking her fallen golden hair behind her ear. Whatever you want. The TV screen switched to a New York news channel. The anchor, dressed in a sharp blue suit, reported with a serious expression. According to the latest reports, a beverage factory on the outskirts of Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, was attacked by an unknown armed force early this morning. Parts of the factory facilities were destroyed by explosions, and there are currently no reports of casualties. The attackers claimed to be a special unit combating transnational terrorist organizations, led by U.S. Army General Ross. The scene of the bombed factory appeared on screen. Thick black smoke billowed into the sky, half of the corrugated iron factory building had collapsed, and broken glass bottles and machine parts were scattered on the ground. Several soldiers in camouflage uniforms were cordoning off the factory, and U.S. military helicopters could be seen in the distance. Lin Yi's gaze instantly darkened. Beverage factory. General Ross. He didn't need to think twice to know that this was not some counter-terrorism operation at all, but Ross once again pursuing Banner. He had seen Banner's file in prison last time and knew that Banner had been living incognito in South America to evade Ross, but he was still found. Gwen also noticed something was amiss and frowned. General Ross. Why would he go to Brazil to bomb a beverage factory? There must be something wrong here. Lin Yi nodded, and just as he was about to speak, his phone in his pocket suddenly rang. He picked up the phone and saw Dr. Banner on the caller ID, his expression growing even more solemn. I need to take this call. He gently patted Gwen's back and stood up, walking to the window. Lin Yi. Banner's hoarse and urgent voice came from the other end of the line, with wind and car horns audible in the background. Did you see the news? Ross found me. He bombed the beverage factory where I work. I'm currently fleeing towards downtown Rio, and his men are still chasing me. Don't panic. Lin Yi's voice tried to remain steady to help Banner calm down. Where are you now? Are you injured? I'm fine, just a little tired, Banner said, panting. I'm on a bus heading to downtown Rio right now. Ross's troops probably won't find me for a while. But I know they won't give up. I need a safe place. Come to New York, Lin Yi said immediately. Go to Stark Tower. I'll arrange for someone to meet you. Ms. Potts is now the CEO of Stark Industries. I can talk to her and have Stark Industries temporarily take you in. Even if Ross is bold, he wouldn't dare directly storm Stark Tower to apprehend someone. There was a few seconds of silence on the other end, and Banner's voice carried a hint of hesitation. But, I'm afraid of causing you trouble. I know Ross has a lot of power, and he won't let go of anyone connected to me. Don't worry, I can handle it. Lin Yi's tone was firm. Your most important task now is to leave Brazil as soon as possible and hide in New York first. I'll help you figure out how to solve Ross's problem. Also, I want to talk to you about controlling the Hulk inside you. Perhaps I can help. When Banner heard, control the Hulk, his eyes lit up, and his voice gained a hint of hope. Really? You have a way to control it. I can't guarantee it, but we can try, Lin Yi said. First, buy a plane ticket, try to choose flights with many layovers to avoid U.S. military surveillance. Once you arrive at New York's JFK airport, call me, and I'll have my driver pick you up. Okay. Thank you, Lin Yi. Banner's voice finally relaxed a bit. I'll go buy a ticket now and get there as soon as possible. Hanging up the phone, Lin Yi turned around and saw Gwen standing behind him, her blue eyes filled with worry. Is that Dr. Banner? Is he okay? He's fine for now, and he's on his way to New York. Lin Yi walked over and put his arm around her shoulder. Don't worry, I'll protect him. Gwen nodded and leaned into his arms. You be careful too. I heard my dad say that General Ross is a very stubborn man, and he'll do anything to catch Dr. Banner. I know, I'll be careful. Lin Yi lowered his head and kissed the top of her head, just about to comfort her when his phone rang again. This time, the caller ID showed Eddie Brock. Lin Yi raised an eyebrow. Why would Eddie suddenly call him? Was something wrong with his body? He answered the phone and put it on speaker so Gwen could hear. Mr. Brock, is something wrong? Mr. Lin Yi. Eddie's voice on the other end was tinged with confusion and a bit of irritation. I interviewed Dr. Drake from the Life Foundation yesterday, and since then I've been feeling unwell, a bit dizzy, and I keep wanting to eat raw meat. I remembered the business card you gave me, saying to call you if something was wrong with my body, so I wanted to ask, do you know what's going on? Lin Yi's heart skipped a beat. Raw meat. Dizziness. Had Eddie already come into contact with venom? He quickly asked. When you interviewed yesterday, did you enter the Life Foundation's laboratory? Did you come into contact with anything strange, like black liquid or containers? Laboratory. Eddie thought for a moment. Drake took me on a tour of a symbiote research lab, and there were a lot of glass jars with black, gooey stuff in them. I was a bit far away at the time and didn't touch anything, but on the way back, I felt like something had landed on my clothes, and I brushed it off. Lin Yi frowned. It seemed Eddie had indeed been targeted by venom, but the parasitism wasn't complete yet. He quickly said, where are you now? Have you experienced any skin darkening or a sudden increase in strength? I'm at home, and my skin hasn't darkened yet, but my strength seems a bit greater than usual. When I opened the door just now, I accidentally broke the doorknob. Eddie's voice grew increasingly anxious. Mr. Lin Yi, what exactly is wrong with me? Am I suffering from some strange illness? Don't panic, it's not a strange illness. Lin Yi tried to keep his voice calm. Come to Stark Tower immediately. I'll be waiting for you in the biological lab. Remember, don't touch anyone on the way, don't get emotional, try to stay calm. Call me when you get to the tower, and I'll have someone pick you up. Okay. Okay. I'll be right there. Eddie said, then hastily hung up the phone. Gwen looked at Lin Yi, her eyes full of confusion. What's wrong with Eddie? Those symptoms he described sound so strange. He might have been targeted by a symbiote, Lin Yi explained. It's an alien creature that parasitizes people, controls their consciousness, and enhances their strength, but it also makes them irritable and bloodthirsty. I warned him before, but I didn't expect him to still come into contact with it. Gwen's eyes widened in surprise. Alien creature. Will he be in danger? Not for now. As long as we intervene in time, we can separate the symbiote from him. Lin Yi patted her hand reassuringly. Don't worry, I have a way to handle it. After speaking, Lin Yi looked down at his watch. It was only a little past 11. Banner would take at least a dozen hours to get from Brazil to New York. Eddie would take about an hour to get from home to Stark Tower. It was still early, so there was no need to disrupt their weekend plans so soon. He turned and hugged Gwen, resting his chin on the top of her head, his voice gentle. Don't worry about these bothersome things. It will take some time for them to get here. Our weekend isn't over yet. Let's continue watching the show, or would you like to go out for lunch? My treat. Gwen looked up, the worry in her blue eyes gradually fading, replaced by a sweet smile. Sounds great. I want to eat the creamy mushroom pasta from that Italian restaurant we went to last time, and tiramisu. No problem. Lin Yi pinched her cheek. But before that, shouldn't we change our clothes? We can't go out in our pajamas, can we? Gwen looked down at her own pajamas, then at Lin Yi's gray silk pajamas, and her face suddenly turned red. Ah, I almost forgot. I'll go change right now. She broke free from Lin Yi's embrace and bounced up the stairs like a little rabbit, her golden hair tracing a beautiful arc in the air. Lin Yi leaned back on the sofa, watching her retreating figure, and couldn't help but smile. With such a cute and vibrant girl by his side, even the most troublesome things seemed less difficult to handle. After about 10 minutes, Gwen came downstairs dressed. She wore a light blue denim mini skirt, paired with a white knit top, and a beige trench coat over it. Her golden hair was tied in a high ponytail, revealing her smooth forehead and delicate collarbone. She walked up to Lin Yi, twirled around, and looked at him with sparkling blue eyes. Do I look good? You look beautiful. Lin Yi stood up and reached out to adjust the collar of her trench coat. Our Gwen looks beautiful in anything. Gwen's face flushed slightly from his compliment, and she reached out to link her arm with his. Then let's go. I'm starving. Lin Yi smiled and nodded, picked up his keys and jacket from the entryway, and walked out the door with Gwen. The sun was just right, the breeze was gentle, and the streets were bustling with people, full of the vibrancy of life. Gwen, holding Lin Yi's arm, chattered about interesting things at school as they walked, like how Peter had recently been criticized by the professor again for being late, and how Mary Jane's new painting had won a school award. Lin Yi listened patiently, occasionally interjecting a few words, his heart filled with contentment. He knew that once Banner and Eddie arrived, a new round of busyness would begin, but at least for now, he could temporarily put aside those crises and spend quality time with Gwen, enjoying this weekend. Reaching the roadside, Lin Yi opened the door of the Lincoln car, letting Gwen get in first, then he sat in the driver's seat. The car slowly started and headed towards the Italian restaurant. Gwen leaned back in the passenger seat, opened the window, letting the wind caress her face, a sweet smile constantly on her lips. Oh, right, Gwen suddenly remembered something and turned to look at Lin Yi. After we deal with Dr. Banner and Eddie's situation, how about we have a picnic in Central Park? I saw online that the cherry blossoms in the park are blooming recently, and they're especially beautiful. Sounds good, Lin Yi turned to glance at her. The sunlight shone on her profile, her eyelashes casting faint shadows, beautiful like a painting. We'll buy some sandwiches, fruit, and bring a bottle of red wine, and really relax then. That's great. Gwen clapped her hands excitedly and pinched Lin Yi's cheek. I knew you were the best. Lin Yi held her hand, brought it to his lips, and gently kissed it, his eyes tender, as long as you're happy. Gwen was nestled in Lin Yi's arms, poking his chin with her fingertips when his phone vibrated on the coffee table. Who is it, disturbing us on the weekend? Gwen pouted, reaching to silence it, but Lin Yi gently held her hand. It might be something important. Lin Yi picked up his phone and raised an eyebrow when he saw Eddie Brock on the screen. He swiped to answer. Mr. Brock, where are you? I'm still waiting for you here. Eddie's frustrated voice came from the other end of the line, with faint sounds of women arguing in the background. Mr. Lin Yi, I'm sorry, I can't make it. I was halfway there on my motorcycle when my girlfriend, Anne, stopped me. She insists on dragging me to the hospital. Hospital. Lin Yi said softly, all right, you go to the hospital first. Remember, if anything happens that you can't handle, call me immediately. Got it, thanks, Mr. Lin. Eddie said in a hurry and then hung up. Lin Yi put down his phone, and Gwen immediately leaned in, her blue eyes full of curiosity. Is it that reporter from before? Don't worry about him. Aren't we going to check out that popular coffee shop this afternoon, and also go see Peter's photography exhibition? If we dawdle any longer, all the window seats at the coffee shop will be taken. Oh, right. I'm going to wear that white dress I bought last time, it'll look great in photos. New York City Central Hospital. In the hospital corridor, Anne walked ahead, dressed in a business suit, her high heels clicking crisply on the tiles. Eddie followed behind, trying to explain as he walked. Anne, I'm really not sick. That voice is just a hallucination. I've been too tired from rushing my articles lately, a few days of rest will fix it. Eddie, you're always talking to thin air now. At lunch, we were at the restaurant, and you suddenly yelled at the steak on your plate, don't eat it, it doesn't taste good. Everyone around us was staring. Do you have any idea how embarrassed I was? Eddie opened his mouth to retort, but a hoarse voice suddenly echoed in his mind, human women are so troublesome. Why don't we bite off her head, Eddie? Shut up. Eddie instinctively snarled, drawing strange looks from nearby nurses. Anne's face grew even worse. See, you're doing it again. Eddie, I've already talked to my friend Dan. He's a doctor here and will help you with a comprehensive checkup. Eddie could only nod. All right, I'll get checked, but you have to believe me, I'm really not sick. Anne didn't speak, turned, and continued walking, pushing open the door to a consultation room. Inside sat a man in a white coat, wearing gold-rimmed glasses, looking gentle and refined. Seeing them enter, he smiled and stood up. Anne, this must be your boyfriend, Eddie. I'm Daniel Lewis, you can call me Dan. Hello, Dan. Eddie sat down in the chair, feeling uncomfortable all over. Don't be nervous, it's just a routine checkup. Dan took out a medical record book, flipping through it as he asked. Anne said you often have hallucinations and talk to thin air. At this moment, Eddie heard venom stirring again. He's trying to hit on your girlfriend, Eddie. I wouldn't mind a headless Dan here. Shut up, Eddie said. Dan paused, seemingly having gotten his answer. Let's do an MRI first to see if there are any issues with your brain. Dan closed the medical record book, stood up, and led the way. Follow me. In the MRI room, the machine hummed. Eddie lay on the examination table, looking at the instrument above his head, feeling increasingly panicked. Suddenly, the voice in his head became agitated. Get out of here. This thing is hurting me. Eddie, make them stop. What's wrong? Anne stood by, seeing Eddie suddenly struggle. She quickly stepped forward to hold him down. Eddie, don't move, it'll be over soon. No. Stop it. Eddie shouted, his body starting to tremble uncontrollably. That thing is burning me. It hurts so much. Dan also panicked and quickly pressed the pause button, and the humming of the instrument stopped. Eddie abruptly sat up from the examination table, his forehead covered in cold sweat, his face as pale as paper. He could clearly feel that the thing inside him had become weak, and even its voice had become faint. Human instruments, I must destroy it. Eddie, are you alright? Anne supported him. Are you feeling unwell somewhere? I'm fine. Eddie gasped, shaking his head. He didn't dare tell Anne the truth. If Anne knew he had a monster inside him, she would definitely break up with him completely. Dan looked at Eddie's appearance, frowning. The MRI results show no obvious abnormalities in your brain, but your reaction just now was very strange. You might be sensitive to the machine's magnetic field. How about you go home and rest first, and come back for a follow-up next week? Eddie quickly nodded. Okay, I'll go back and rest, and come back next week. By the time they left the hospital, it was already dark. Anne and Eddie walked, bickering with each other. Suddenly, Anne's phone rang. She answered the call, and after a few sentences, her face instantly turned ashen. Hanging up the phone, she turned to Eddie, tears suddenly falling. Eddie, I've been fired. What? Eddie was stunned. Why? Because of you. Anne's voice was tearful. Drake complained to the company, saying you deliberately made things difficult for him during the interview and leaked trade secrets of the Life Foundation. To appease Drake, the company fired me, citing suspicion of industrial espionage. Eddie, I already told you before not to dig too deep, not to offend Drake, why didn't you listen? Eddie's heart sank. Anne, I'm sorry, What good is, I'm sorry. Anne interrupted him, wiping her tears, her voice full of disappointment. Do you know how much effort I put into this job? Now, because of you, I've lost everything. We're over, Eddie, I'm breaking up with you. Eddie looked at Anne in disbelief. Anne, don't joke around. We're about to get married, you can't break up with me over this. I'm not joking. Anne's gaze became firm. I'm fed up with your investigative spirit, fed up with you always causing me trouble. Eddie, I wish you a happy life from now on. With that, Anne turned and walked away without looking back. Eddie wanted to chase after her, but the voice in his head suddenly spoke up. Don't chase her. She doesn't love you at all. She only loves her job. Why don't we go kill Drake, and then kill the boss who fired her, to get revenge for you? Shut up. It's all because of you. Eddie roared in anger, punching the nearby lamppost. The lamppost made a clang sound and was actually bent by his punch. He was stunned. When did he get such great strength? That's because you're a loser, Eddie. Venom mocked. Now you have no job, no girlfriend, nothing. Why don't you team up with me? We'll rule New York together, and make all those who look down on you kneel and beg. Eddie's sanity was slipping away. He felt a fire burning in his heart and just wanted to destroy something. He got on the motorcycle parked by the roadside and started the engine, but it wouldn't start. Eddie angrily kicked the motorcycle aside. Eddie, I want to eat people. How about we go for a stroll on the street and find some prey? Venom chattered incessantly. Eddie was trembling with rage. He walked aimlessly forward and unknowingly ended up in the middle of the road. A black taxi drove towards him. The driver slammed on the brakes, and the tires screeched as they rubbed against the ground, stopping just in front of Eddie. Are you trying to get yourself killed? The driver poked his head out and shouted angrily. Eddie looked up, his eyes full of hostility. Get lost. The back door of the taxi opened, and a man in a gray jacket and hat stepped out, followed by a blonde woman. The man looked very tired, with heavy dark circles under his eyes, but he tried to remain calm. Sir, are you all right? That was very dangerous. You should move to the side of the road first. This man was Bruce Banner, who had just arrived in New York and was preparing to find Lin Yi. The woman beside him was his girlfriend, Betty Ross. Banner had been evading General Ross's pursuit and had finally reunited with Betty. He only wanted to get to Stark Tower as soon as possible to ask Lin Yi for help in stabilizing the Hulk within him, and he didn't want to cause trouble on the road. Don't bother me. Eddie was currently consumed by anger and despair. He didn't hear the kindness in Banner's words. Instead, he took a step forward and pushed Banner. Get lost quickly, don't block my way. Banner stumbled. Betty quickly supported him and frowned at Eddie, saying, Sir, you're going too far. Too far. Eddie sneered. Venom in his mind was constantly egging him on. I have nothing left now. How about I kill you all and we go to hell together? As he spoke, he suddenly reached out and pushed Betty. Betty was unprepared and was pushed backward, hitting her head on the car door with a thud, which hurt so much that tears almost fell from her eyes. Betty. Banner's expression instantly changed. Betty was what he cared about most, and Eddie hurting Betty had completely crossed his line. He supported Betty, his eyes starting to glow green, and his voice became deep. Sir, this is my final warning. Leave here immediately. There's a monster living inside me, and I don't want to hurt you, but if you keep causing trouble, I can't guarantee what will happen. Monster. Eddie was stunned for a moment. You're saying my lines. Eddie immediately became irritable. You have a monster too. I have one inside me too. As soon as he finished speaking, Eddie's body began to change. Black symbiote surged from beneath his skin, covering his entire body, forming a grotesque black battle suit. His eyes were milky white, and his mouth was filled with sharp fangs, making him look like a beast from hell. See. This is my monster. Venom opened its mouth, sticking out a long, crimson tongue, its voice hoarse. Now, it's time to show you what I can do. Banner looked at Venom in front of him, and his expression completely darkened. Don't do this, Bruce, I'm fine. Betty pulled Banner's arm, trying to soothe him. But Banner was no longer going to restrain himself. He shielded Betty behind him. With a low growl, his body began to swell, green skin covering his entire body, muscles bulging, and his clothes ripping to shreds. The Hulk had appeared. Roar. The Hulk let out a deafening roar and punched Venom. Venom reacted quickly, dodging sideways, and at the same time, extended black tendrils, wrapping them around the Hulk's arm, and pulled hard. The Hulk didn't budge. Instead, he grabbed Venom's tendrils and threw him away. Boom. Venom slammed heavily into the wall of a luxurious private villa nearby. A large hole was instantly punched in the wall, and debris scattered everywhere. Venom crawled out of the rubble, shook its head, and a crazy smile appeared on its face. Interesting. Again. It leapt up and pounced on the Hulk, and the two began to wrestle. The Hulk's punches were incredibly powerful, each one capable of creating a large crater, while Venom was incredibly agile, its tendrils able to extend and retract at will, constantly attacking the Hulk's weak points. The battle grew more intense. The walls of the private villa were breached, windows shattered, the lawn was full of craters, and even distant streetlights were affected. Roar. The Hulk grabbed Venom's shoulder, lifted him up, and slammed him heavily onto the ground. A deep trench cracked open in the ground. Venom let out a cry of pain but quickly got back up, black tendrils wrapping around the Hulk's neck, trying to strangle him. Rumble. The villa completely collapsed. In the revolving restaurant on the top floor of the hotel, candlelight flickered, and the melodious sound of a violin flowed through the air. Tony, dressed in a black suit, with his hair meticulously combed, had a medium-rare steak on the white plate in front of him, next to a glass of red wine. Pepper sat opposite him, wearing a red dress, with a gentle smile on her face, cutting the salad on her plate. This is rare, Tony. Pepper looked up at Tony, her eyes full of amusement. I thought you'd only be flying around in your suit or inventing things in the lab. It seems you have a serious misunderstanding about me, Miss Pepper. Tony raised his red wine glass and raised an eyebrow at Pepper. Next week, I'll take you to Paris to see the Eiffel Tower light show, how about it? Paris. Pepper was stunned for a moment, then smiled. You don't need to go with me. You should hurry up and debug the new element stabilizer so I don't have to worry anymore. Tony put down his wine glass. I'm fine now. The new element reactor is very stable, and Jarvis monitors the data every day, there are no problems. Promise me, Tony. Pepper put down her knife and fork, looking at Tony, Don't always hide things from me in the future, okay? Tony looked at Pepper's worried eyes, his heart warmed, and he reached out to hold her hand. Okay, I promise you. Just then, Tony's smartwatch suddenly vibrated, and a message popped up on the screen. The sender was Bruce Wayne. Tony frowned and clicked on the message. Hey, Mr. Stark. I have some good news for you, your house blew up. Tony. Thanks for watching.